September. The time is 10:30 a.m. I am Councillor Thomas Sneath, Chairman of the committee, and to my right is Councillor Carl Edguse-Zagowski, Vice Chairman of the committee. We are also joined by various officers from Planning, Democratic Services and Legal Services. Can I remind you that this meeting is being broadcast live via the County Council's website, and with this in mind, I would like to welcome members of the public and press watching this live. As the meeting is being streamed in the usual way, I would like to remind you all that your comments will remain accessible online and may be reported by the media. We have had our usual fire alarm test this morning, with no further drills planned for this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, please will you leave the council chamber through the rear doors and congregate in the front car park past reception. Can I remind everyone to ensure that their mobiles, laptops and iPads are on silent for the duration of this meeting. Also, may I remind you that the hearing loop is now activated. I would also like to remind members to not leave the chamber during an item, as this will preclude them from being able to vote on that item. Requests to speak will be collected by the Vice Chairman, and there will be a comfort break planned before item 5 to allow those members wishing to speak on item 5 joining us via Teams to dial in. We now move to the formal agenda. Item number 1 is apologies for absence. Andrew, do we have any apologies?
We've received just one apologies for absence, Chairman, from Councillor Matt Bowles with no replacement and no other apologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 2 is declarations of councillor interests. This is an opportunity for members to declare any pecuniary or other interests. Do members wish to declare any? Councillor Bean.
Yeah, I should just like to declare I have an interest in item number 5 as it is in my ward. However, I have not made any comment on this particular item and I intend to stay in the council and act as a member of the committee. Wonderful.
Councillor Woodworth.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just the same for me. Item 4.6 is in my division, but I've had no input on it and I'm happy to continue within the committee. Thank you.
Wonderful. Please let the record reflect that Councillor Bean and Councillor Woodruff have declared an interest in relation to item number 5 for Councillor Bean and item 4.6 for Councillor Woodruff. We now move to item 3, which is the approve and sign the minutes of the last meeting held on the 14th of July 2025 as a correct and accurate record. The minutes can be found on pages 5 to 16 of the agenda pack. Do we have a proposer? Wonderful. Councillor brilliant. And the Secretary, sorry, Wimhurst. We'll now take a vote by raise of hands. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. Those minutes have been agreed and I will sign them at the end of the meeting. We now move to the first part of our agenda, where the committee will consider the report and objections to the executive proposals for proposed traffic regulation orders. These will be presented by Jan Gibson, Programme Leader for Minor Works and Traffic. Agenda item, first one is 4.1, which is Burgh le Marsh, Hall Lane, proposed waiting restrictions. Over to you, Jan.
Thank you, Chairman. So this first report, I'll just wait for the plan to show. Thank you. This first report covers a proposal to introduce waiting restrictions along the narrow section of Hall Lane in Burgh le Marsh. There's not much demand for parking here, but when something does park, it does obstruct the flow of traffic in terms of large vehicles and agricultural vehicles. We've had one objection on the basis that it will be a negative impact will result for residents. Our view is, though, that these restrictions will be required. Residents can, vehicles can park to load and unload, and permits can be issued for special circumstances where a vehicle needs to be parked. So the recommendation is therefore that the objection is overruled so that the scheme can be introduced. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any comments, Vice Chairman?
Would anyone like to speak?
In that case, yes, looking at the report and doing a street view on it, the properties do have adequate off-road parking for visitors. There is no white line down the road, which indicates it is a very narrow road, and therefore I think the officer's recommendation to the executive is correct, and therefore I will recommend approval, and I would like to propose that the committee note the contents of the report and Appendix A has given regard to the objections received and recommends to the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport to approve the proposed order. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Wimhurst. We'll now take a vote by show of hands. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation has been carried. We now move to the second item, number 4.2, which is Butterwick School Lane, Butterwick Road, proposed waiting restrictions, mandatory school keep clear markings, and bus stop clearway. Thank you, Jan.
Thank you. You just move to the third slide, please. This shows some photographs there. There's an existing school safety zone through here, a very extensive school safety zone comprising zigzag markings only. It's non-enforceable and over time has become ignored and is disregarded by most parents parking in the area. The parking occurs on verges around junctions and in bus stops. So just go back a slide, please. We're proposing some part-time restrictions as shown in blue and the school mandatory keep clear markings which will apply just at school start and finish times. Double yellow lines around junctions and bus stop clearways to protect the bus stops. We've had a number of objections, about 4 objections, concerned about the displacement of parking into the surrounding residential areas and the impact this will have on residents and the effect on residents receiving deliveries and blue badge hold-up parking. We acknowledge that there will be some displacement of parking, but feel that this is best displaced away from the area where there's high pedestrian footfall around the school, and we're hopeful that the restrictions will encourage the use of the off-street parking areas shown in Appendix A for parking rather than on-street. There will be exemptions in the order for vehicles to load and unload and for blue badge parking for up to 3 hours. Our recommendation therefore is that the objections are overruled so that we may introduce these restrictions as advertised. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member wish to comment, Vice Chairman?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say firstly thank you to Jan for the presentation there. Looking at it, it's sort of relatively straightforward, and I think I wouldn't have any personal objections to moving that forward. Thank you.
Councillor Vernon.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this feels a very familiar story, and it is a real shame that we're in a position where people are parking in bus stops and the current situation is unenforceable and completely ignored by the majority of people. I feel that we have to approve this. Children and pedestrian safety around areas should be our priority, and I'm happy to second that proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Hill, OBE.
Needn't worry about the OBE, we've got to shorten the meeting a bit. I'll spoil the proposals. I'm just interested in the blue line opposite the girls' school lane. I mean, why that was, that's been considered as well as the rest of it I support, just because there is one house, obviously, which will have parking during school term times not allowed. So I'm just wondering, if we have an explanation why that particular little bit of blue is there.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. I think we've put them there to ensure that the turning manoeuvres in and out of the girls' school lane can be maintained at school start and finish times, because otherwise parental parking does take place throughout that entire length, and agricultural vehicles do struggle sometimes to get through there. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to follow up on Councillor Vernon's comments that unfortunately these days there does seem to be an awful lot of inconsiderate parking around schools. So I know it's going back a bit, but when I was a kid, you walked to school or you cycled to school. Now everybody gets taken in a car, and the parking really is inconsiderate, so I would definitely support this proposal. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you very much. Yes, it is a shame that the original keep clear that's currently there is not been observed, and therefore we're going to have to take these steps. We do note that there is parking opposite the school in the playfield, so there is a car park available for parents if they wish to use it. And as always, the children's safety must always be paramount in any decision. And we have a mover in the presence of Councillor Wimhurst, that the committee notes the contents of the report and Appendix A, have given regard to the objections received, and recommends to the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport support the proposed order. It's been seconded by Councillor Vernon, therefore I'd like to have a raise of hands for those in support. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The recommendation has been carried. We now move to the next item, 4.3 in Donington, the A52 Bicker Road, proposed 50 miles an hour speed limit. Over to you, Jan.
Thank you. Excuse me. So we've proposed a 50-mile-an-hour limit through this section of A52, which currently does attract a large number of pedestrians crossing and vehicle movements in and out of Schools Church Street to access local amenities. A report was brought to this committee originally to consider a 40-mile-an-hour limit as a borderline case through here. The police view, however, was that a 50-mile-an-hour limit was better suited to the conditions through which drivers are passing, and that a 40-mile-an-hour limit would be difficult to enforce and there'd be a lot of non-compliance. We've subsequently, that was approved at that committee, a 50-mile-an-hour limit that is, and we've subsequently been out to consultation and public advertisement for to the extent shown in Appendix A. We've received a number of objections and a petition concerned that the 50-mile-an-hour limit will not improve safety for pedestrians, and that a 40-mile-an-hour limit would achieve a lot more in that respect. There's a lot of manoeuvres in and out of Church Street now, as previously said, accessing new local amenities in the area. Sorry, I've lost my thread. We are hoping that the location shown will be where a pedestrian refuge is to be built. That's been agreed, and that will hopefully take place in the next 12 months. And the recommendation that this will improve safety for pedestrians, and we therefore have recommended in the report that a 50-mile-an-hour limit is supported in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Councillor Jane King, the local division member for Donington Rural, which covers this item's area, here today to provide a statement on the item. Over to you, Councillor King.
Hi. About 2-3 years ago, the speed limit was dropped because they were doing some work, Tritton Knoll or whichever, Viking Link, whatever one it was. It was only supposed to be in for about 6 months. It ended up being in there for about 18 months, I think it was, and there wasn't an issue. Then it went back up to 60, I think it was then. The new co-op and a new fish and chip shop was built right on the junction there, and we were having a lot of instances of people coming along the A52 Co-op shooting off down Church Street, which was causing a few issues. Police don't have an awful lot of records of accidents. A lot of them were fender benders, which don't get reported, so of course it doesn't build up a picture. And we have lots of residents that live along Bicker Road, Northorpe and Days Lane. A lot of the kids, because both the schools are the other side of the A52, they go to the schools there, primary school and secondary school, plus the main bulk of the shops is the opposite side to the A52. It's fine, sometimes you can get across straight away when it's clear. Other times, one side is clear, the other side isn't. If you're not very nimble and you've got buggies or you've got toddlers, things like that, it really isn't very safe. And I really feel quite strongly that we should try and get the speed dropped to 40 miles an hour.
Thank you, Councillor King. Do we have any comments? Chair.
Councillor Wimhurst.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor King there for really good sort of analysis of the situation for people who aren't familiar with it. My only concern with dropping it back down is obviously the police recommendations that it could potentially be more dangerous to do so, simply because of the rash overtaking manoeuvres and things like that. So I'd be very cautious about reducing the limit here. However, I do like the idea of the public refuges for pedestrians and things like that. So it may be an idea to stick with the 50, and then should we see that a 40 is required moving forward, potentially drop it back to what it was. But that's just my thoughts on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. I agree with Councillor King. As Jane knows here extremely well as the local councillor. I've also had some experience of the area, travelled there myself. It's an extremely busy area. You referred to the new co-op there, fish and chip shop, schools. This is about safety for those going to school and safety, as Jane referred to, particularly for those with mobility issues accessing the shops. So we do need to take safety very seriously and also try to prevent future accidents, because we know when accidents occur, that affects the lives of so many people and their families. So I do support that. I agree with Councillor King's comments, and we do need to take some action here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Hill.
Thank you. I'd like to support what Councillor Wimhurst said, that yes, it is, I mean, basically this is Donington bypass for all intents and purposes, and as with Councillor Taylor, I mean, it's a bit of road I do tend to use quite a lot. I think the issue here is I would support the fact that whether you had a 40, because I have a concern that there's lots of 40 miles per hour being put in county-wide, and I have to say the vast majority of them are mostly ignored unless there's some sort of enforcement. So, I mean, I am of the view that the more you put things in, unless it's really necessary, the less likelihood that drivers will adhere to them. I think the issue here is about how many pedestrians actually need to cross. I think there are some houses on the other side, but all the rest of it will be vehicular access on the road. And yes, it's very busy. You've got the co-op there where the agricultural merchants used to be and the fish and chip shop. So I would support Councillor Wimhurst's view that let's go down to 50 and see how it goes. There's nothing to stop it being revisited in a year's or 18 months' time and see that. But my personal view is I would support the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Verman.
Thank you, Chairman. With all of these things, I think sort of as we discussed in the last item, we're talking about pedestrian safety, we're talking about safety of people crossing the roads. I think that receiving a petition that has 438 signatures on it is a vast number of people who've taken the time to submit that, and I would support Councillor King's suggestion to look at a lower speed limit. And certainly, I don't know whether it's possible to condition this in. If we are unsuccessful in having the lower speed limit at this time, I would like it sort of definitively considered again at a point. I don't know what timescales we could look at, sort of 12 months' time, but I do think this does need to be considered properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Verman. Anyone else wish to comment? No.
Thank you. Again, I know the area very well. I've used the road quite a lot, so I can talk from a personal experience from using it. I think there are people in the chamber that also use the road, and everybody's experience will be different on this road. It's a really difficult situation. As a 44 mean average, normally we would be sat here consulting whether we're going to be a 40 miles an hour. Yes, it's a 50 because of the mean, but we would normally be sitting here consulting, is it worth going down to 40? There's been a lot of changes on that junction. As Councillor King has let the committee know, it was a 40 miles an hour for a very long time, and people slowed down. There was no issues with the junction, and people were accepting it was a 40. The police comment I find quite upsetting, to say that people will ignore the 50 anyway. That's very concerning, because people know that if you can do a 50, maybe there's 10% plus 2, we're at 57. So we're more or less at 60 anyway. I do feel that Councillor Vernon is very correct, as well as the other councillors, in that we need to review this. And therefore I would like to propose that we have a modification to the proposal to allow the executive to make the decision to look at whether a 40 miles an hour, since the information has come forward and the petition and the parish council and all the local councillors have kind of asked for a 40, allow the executive to make a decision to look at whether imposing a 40 miles an hour at this instance, or, as suggested, in the future, make a decision depending on what happens. I am mindful that reducing a speed limit down to 50 and then 6 months a year time reducing down to 40 is another cost to the council. It is all down to safety. I believe that safety must always be paramount. The junction is a staggered junction between two housing estates. There's a lot of properties the other side of the road, and therefore I think that careful consideration by the executive must be given to this instance, and allowing a 40 to be considered if the committee seem that is a good idea. I will bring it back to the committee. Councillor Vernon.
Chairman, I think that sounds like an excellent way forward. May I ask that, sort of as part of his consideration, the Executive Councillor for Highways consults with both yourself and the division member to fully take on board their viewpoints prior to making a decision? Thank you.
Wonderful. In that case then, sorry.
Councillor Wimhurst.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say, completely agree with Councillor Vernon and yourself there, Chair, that we should definitely have a review on this moving forward. So thank you, and definitely support that.
Perfect, thank you. In that case then, I would like to propose that the committee note the content of the report and the proposed speed limit order as detailed in Appendix A, have given regard to the objections received, and recommends to the Executive Councillors for Highway and Transport to modify the proposed order with the changes of considering a 40, let the Executive consider 40, and to come to myself, the Chair, and the local member before any action is taken. I would like to propose that. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Wimhurst. Could we please have a vote, a show of hands, all those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation is carried. We now move over to item 4.1, Gainsborough, Park Springs Road and Pilgrims Approach, proposed waiting restrictions. Over to you, Jan.
Thank you. This proposal is for restrictions on Pilgrims Approach off Park Springs Road. This is a single route into the development, which is quite large, residential development. There's been an incidence of a fire appliance being obstructed by parking. So we've proposed parking as shown in Appendix A to manage that parking. We've had a couple of objections concerned that this will displace vehicles further into the estate, causing problems elsewhere, and that there are no restrictions opposite the junction with Pilgrims Approach, so this will where there should be. Our view is that the restrictions proposed are sufficient to maintain a clear access into the residential development, and that further restrictions won't be required at this time. It's recommended, therefore, that the objections are overruled and that this scheme is introduced as advertised. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any comments, Vice Chair?
Councillor Vernon.
Thank you, Chairman. I note the objections that have been received to these proposals, but quite frankly, when we're in a position where fire appliances and emergency vehicles are being prevented from accessing where they need to get to at speed, I think this is, sort of in my view, an absolute definite, and we should be accepting this and recommending for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wimhurst.
Thank you, Chair. I'd actually like to echo what Councillor Vernon has just said, and in as much as I know the area quite well, and in terms of getting emergency vehicles down it, I mean, this is probably the best, most suitable thing that we should be doing here, and I would definitely support the officer recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak?
Thank you. In that case, then, I would like to propose that the committee note the content of the report and Appendix A has given regard to the objections received and recommends to the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport that the proposal be approved. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Vernon. And we'll have a vote on the raise of hands. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation is now carried. We move to the next item, which is 4.5, Great Gonerby, Green Street and High Street, proposed waiting restrictions. Over to you, Jan. Thank you.
Thank you. If you just go down to the next slide, please. Thank you. This proposal is for double yellow lines at the junction of Green Street and High Street. The photographs indicate the tendency for vehicles to park very close to the junction, which impedes visibility and sometimes can frustrate vehicle manoeuvres. Just going back to the previous slide, we've proposed a very short couple of lengths of double yellow line just to maintain visibility at the junction and also take the opportunity to protect the bus stop just to the north. I've had one objection concerned about displacement of parking further into Green Street and High Street and also the impact on customer parking for local businesses. Our view is that the restrictions are the minimum required that will reduce impact on businesses, all of which have been consulted regarding these proposals and none has made any comment. We're therefore recommending that the objection is overruled so that this scheme may be introduced as advertised. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any comments, Vice Chair?
Councillor Wimhurst.
Thank you again, Chair. So again, looking at this, I mean, it's, you know, cut and dry really. I think due to where the cars are parking at the minute, it is creating a legitimate safety concern. So having the extension of the double yellow lines and no waiting any time there, I think is a really sensible option. And I would like to move with the officer's recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think this is like Councillor Wimhurst said, it's a cut and dry case. Again, it's a case of inconsiderate parking. People know they shouldn't park so close to junctions. If they're not self-policing, then I think we need to put the yellow lines in and do it for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Yeah, support the recommendations. It certainly needs doing, but I think there is an issue here, as it's just been referred to, because it's currently it's against the guidance to park on a junction, and the only people who can enforce that, unless we put TROs in, are the police. So I'm a bit concerned we'll be ending up putting double yellow lines everywhere because the police aren't doing, or the police are not enforcing what is the guidance. So shame the portfolio holder's not here, but I mean, I think there is an issue where, I don't know what conversations have been had with the police, but there is an issue. Are we just going to be spending a lot of money putting a lot of double yellow lines in everywhere because the police are refusing to enforce basically guidance or the law, whichever way you want to look at it. So I certainly agree with the recommendations, but I think there's a bigger issue here that perhaps could be passed on to the executive. I see we've got Councillor Gibson here, that next conversation with the police is, are they just walking away from any enforcement whatsoever? And it does cause us a problem.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Would anyone else like to comment? Councillor Bean?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to reinforce what Councillor Hill's just said, that at the end of the day, the police should be enforcing this. It's an unnecessary expense for us, but unfortunately someone's got to enforce it. So if the police aren't going to do it, then it is down to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bean. Any other comments?
Thank you. Councillor Hill, I've got in big letters on my thing, they shouldn't be parking on a junction. And I am completely in agreement with every member here that it is a shame that we are having to put double yellows on junctions where people shouldn't be parking, just to remind them that they shouldn't be parking. But yes, it should be enforced. And with that, we have had it moved by Councillor Wimhurst that the committee note the content of the report and Appendix A, has given regard to the objections received and recommends to the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport that the proposed order be approved. It's been seconded by Councillor Bean. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation is now carried. Moving swiftly over to item 4.6, Lincoln Sadler Road, proposed waiting restrictions and bus stop clearway. Over to you, Jan.
Thank you. So Lincoln Sadler Road, we've been contacted regarding obstructive parking along here. It's a main distributor road through a very large industrial estate, and there's many large vehicles requiring access to the side roads and accesses to the various businesses of varying sizes. 24-hour restrictions have therefore been proposed as shown at Appendices A and B in red. The driving test centre is located off Earlsfield Close. If you just drop down a couple of slides, please. You can see the visibility on exiting Earlsfield Close does cause quite an issue. The driving test centre has been complaining about this for quite some time, and therefore we've proposed restrictions quite some distance along that length. We've also proposed bus stop clearways, as shown in Appendices B and A in orange. And we've had a number of objections from businesses in the area who rely on on-street parking provision as they do not have sufficient space off-street for their staff or customers. So they're concerned that the restrictions will displace parking further along Sadler Road and affect other businesses, and also potentially into the residential areas to the north of Donington Road. Our view is that as a main distributor route through this estate, it should be maintained clear for all types of vehicle at all times in critical areas around junctions and along other sections as proposed. The bus stop clearways will make a valuable contribution to the scheme in that it's a well-attended bus route, and it's being compromised currently by buses not being able to access the curb, and therefore those with accessibility issues are compromised in accessing bus services. The recommendation in the report, therefore, is that the objections are overruled so that these proposals may be introduced as advertised. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any comments?
Councillor Woodcroft.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, obviously, as I alluded to, this is in my division. Thank you, Jan, for the report. I think I might have seen you down there while I was. I'm in the area quite a lot myself. So, yeah, it is. We're going to duplicate, I think, what we've already said, but it's inconsiderate parking down there. I've seen them. They park right up to the junctions again. It's very difficult to get out, and you do often get stuck behind learner drivers because they can't. Not only are they trying to learn to drive, they can't get out of that junction because it is so bad. Again, unfortunately, we're in a situation again where it isn't policed properly, and as obviously Councillor Bean and Hill have said, if the police don't go down there and enforce it, then we're going to have to. It's the few spoiling it for the many. I do have concerns. I mean, that road is full every day of vehicles. So where are they going to all go? But obviously something needs to be done. It's a bad road. Like you say, it's heavily industrial. Lots of HGVs down there, vehicle transporters, there's wholesalers, there's distribution down there. Something has to be done down there, so I fully support this.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Thank you. Yep, looking at the report and the good old Google Maps, as always, there is plenty of parking around. I don't feel that the displacement is going to be detrimental to the businesses. And as you say, and as quite rightly said by Councillor Woodruff, that people trying to learn to drive don't expect to have their visibility blocked by cars parking right on the junction, as they will have quite rightly learnt that they shouldn't be doing that. In which case, I would like to propose that the committee notes the content of the report and the appendices A and B has given regard to the objections received and recommends to the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport that the proposed order be moved. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Woodruff. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation is now carried. We now move to next item, which is 4.7 in Louth, Newmarket, proposed waiting restrictions. Over to you, Jan.
Thank you. This is a proposal to introduce a short length of limited waiting to be enforced during the day, Monday to Saturday. Currently, deliveries to a local business in the area are unable to take place as the vehicle cannot get to the curb. We've had a couple of objections from residents who are concerned that parking is at a premium in the area and this will exacerbate that. Officers' view is that it's important to support local businesses in the area as they do serve the local residents, and therefore this proposal will be of benefit to the business and also customers visiting that business, and we would therefore recommend that the objections are overruled. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any comments?
No comments.
Wonderful. Well, it just seems logical to me to have the restriction outside the shop, and therefore I would like to propose that the committee notes the contents of the report and the Appendix A has given regard to the objections received and recommends to the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport that the proposed order be approved. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Wimhurst. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? And any abstentions? Thank you. The recommendation is now carried. Moving on to item 4.8, Morton A15, proposed pedestrian crossing facility. Over to you, Jan.
Thank you. So we just move down to the third slide, please. This shows an existing pedestrian refuge on the A15 in Morton village. We were approached by the two local members abutting this area for a potential improvement of this facility, and subsequently carried out a pedestrian crossing survey. The score gave us met the criteria for a zebra crossing facility. However, the high traffic flow on the A15 precludes the installation of a zebra, and the purpose of this report is to request approval for it to be upgraded to a puffing crossing facility. Therefore, the recommendation is that approval is sought for funding for that installation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any comments?
Councillor Hill.
Yeah, thank you. I'm one of the local members who represent one half. The A15 is the boundary. So yes, this has been a long-standing, quite a tricky issue actually, because Morton is quite a big village, and on one side you have the co-op and some other facilities, and then there's the issue of school traffic and all the rest of it. In addition, there are currently long queues in busy times off the high street in particular, at busy times, because obviously the A15 in the morning is the most problem, where you get a lot of continuous traffic nearly, and sometimes very difficult, often very difficult to get off the high street and turn south to Bourne effectively. A lesser issue in Hanthorpe. In addition, there is a restriction on the co-op car park, so if you're coming either way, you have to go down Hanthorpe Road and then park in the car park there, and then exit onto the A15. So it's been a long-standing issue in Morton for many years. We've now got a 30-mile-an-hour limit, but of course one of the problems is there is a junction there which obviously limits as to how near you can be. So over recent years, the refuge was put in, I think following the installation, when the co-op was put in there. So that is there now, but I think there's a strong feeling in the village, particularly with the school children crossing, but also more elderly people having to cross, that the refuge isn't adequate. So I think the reason for the request for a puff-in is, as I've just said, there is a big issue of traffic backing up. So if it's continually backing up because it's just a zebra crossing, a puff-in crossing would be more appropriate. But A, it would only be activated when, as explained in the report, when necessary, because obviously puff-in has more automated functions on it. So if you're going to put anything more than the current refuge in there, I think there is a strong view that it should be a puff-in, otherwise you'll probably exacerbate the problems that already exist in this area. So I'm a bit confused by the recommendation, but I would certainly suggest or propose that the committee actually recommends that a puff-in is installed, but obviously I appreciate there is a extra cost to that, and then obviously that is taken into consideration by the portfolio holder in terms of his budget, whether that's acceptable or not. I think if we just leave it open, that doesn't really give any clear sort of signal, shall we say, to the portfolio holder. So I would propose that we recommend a puff-in, and obviously if it can't be afforded, so be it, and then we'll take it from there. I think if we go any other routes, we'll end up with a zebra, which I think will actually make, I'm not sure it will help much at all, because it's so busy there. So that's my proposal, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Anyone else wish to comment? Councillor Vernon.
Thank you, Chairman. I am very familiar with this area and frequently sit in the traffic that Councillor Hill is referring to on my various journeys around the local area. I would wholeheartedly support his recommendation, in particular that the puff-in crossing is given consideration, and yeah, happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Vernon. Councillor Wimhurst.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillors Hill and Vernon for their comments on that. The one thing I would say, obviously, is the cost for it. And don't get me wrong, we're all about safety and everything else. But I think in this instance, we're already at a 30. I'd be mindful that it may be best to have the zebra crossing there rather than the puff-in. But I can appreciate, Councillor Hill and Councillor Vernon's request for the puff-in crossing there. But I do think that for where we are and everything else, a zebra would be more than sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments? Councillor Vernon.
Chairman, with your permission, if I may come back in, I think it is an extremely busy road in the mornings, and I would have grave concerns about how many drivers would actually ignore a zebra crossing full stop to continue on their journey, particularly given the volume of traffic that uses that road at peak times. Councillor Hill has obviously alluded to the fact that there are frequently queues to go right and to turn other ways and to come out the co-op. And I do think that we perhaps need to consider the safety aspect of it for pedestrians and children crossing to go to the village primary school, as well as just the cost implications, although accepting it will need to be considered properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Yeah, I've just come back, and just to explain again, the co-op is a very busy co-op, because Morton is quite big, but also services people going to and from Bourne. So there's a lot of traffic comes out of the co-op onto the A15 on the shaded bit there, and it's very close, you will see, to the proposed zebra crossing. So actually, I think there is a safety issue there as well, because with the busy road and then people turning out of the co-op to go south, you know, you've not got much, you know, you've got an issue there where somebody might want to be rushing. So I accept the point, and you know, it is a matter of finance, but I didn't think this committee was a resources committee. I think this committee was about, you know, appropriate traffic regulation orders. And as I said, what I would hope is the committee said, well, the puffin is the ideal solution, and I think if that is considered unaffordable fare, so be it. It doesn't really make any difference, because if you go for a zebra and we only get a zebra, it's in the report, it says it's going to cost money, so I'm afraid in the village they will just say county council is just saving money at safety's expense. So that's my view. So I would, you know, strongly hope that the committee would support a puffin in the view, you know, I don't know how you want to word it, so it's a preference, and then obviously up to the portfolio holder whether the finances will allow. Does that make sense, Chairman?
Absolutely, Councillor Hill. Jan, do you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you. Apologies if the report doesn't make it clear, but our criteria will not allow us to install a zebra because of the high traffic flow. So the purpose of the report is to inform the committee of that criteria and ask that they are happy to recommend a puffin rather than a zebra on that basis. Thank you.
Councillor Wimhurst.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jan, for the update on that. Obviously, bearing that in mind and taking it into consideration, I think, you know, we'll have to support the puffin in this instance and send it off, obviously, for review and the feasibility study of that. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hill? No. All good. Any further comments? No.
Wonderful, thank you. I totally agree with Councillor Hill and Councillor Vernon on this occasion, because I've travelled the road as well, and I think that having the traffic lights there will enable people to actually safely exit the junctions, because the traffic will be stopped. Zebra is not going to be considered, but again, zebra crossings, people congregate outside, all of a sudden you're going to have people slamming the brakes on, thinking that people are waiting to cross and they're not. So I think puffin is actually the only solution for this. And again, we must listen to local members. There's no point having local members within the chamber that give us their actual first-hand experiences of the road network and these TROs that have been put forward if we don't listen to their comments. I will let Councillor Taker comment.
Thank you, Chair. I've travelled this road quite a lot because it's near one of my constituencies. But looking at the picture or pictorial evidence we've got here, that exit from the co-op seems very, very close to this new crossing. Wouldn't it be better to move the crossing south on the road by approximately, I don't know, 50 to 100 yards to allow traffic to exit the co-op when the lights are on red? Thank you.
I think Councillor Hill.
Well, this has been subject of endless discussion at the parish council. The problem is, the temptation is to go straight across the road where it says Hanthorpe Road to High Street, and people, especially younger people, don't want to walk. It's a short walk, but they think, well, I'm just going to go straight across. So I think the issue is, and we can't put it any closer, Jan, can we, to the junction? So I think that if you move it further away, more people will just say, well, I'm going to go straight across. So in terms of safety, I think this is the best compromise. The parish council we've had a lot of discussions, as we know, over this, but I think this is the compromise. If you move it further south, more people will go straight across, and obviously then there's a safety issue.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Jan?
Thank you. Yeah, just to highlight that the feasibility study referred to in the report is what will determine exactly where that crossing will go, and it will take all those things into account. Thank you.
Wonderful. I think we'll take the report that's been proposed by the officers has been looked at, and the best feasible scheme for this occasion. It has been moved by Councillor Hill, and I propose that the committee note the contents of the report and the relevant pedestrian crossing policy criteria has considered the proposal to submit a bid for funding for the feasibility study and installation of a puffing crossing facility at the location in Appendix A and recommends to the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport that the proposed facility be approved. It's been seconded by Councillor Vernon. I therefore like to put it to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation has been carried. We now move to the final item, number 4.9 of the TRO's final item, is Scopwick B1188, proposed 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. Over to you, Jan.
Thank you. So we've been asked by the Parish Council and the local member to consider an extension to the 30-mile-an-hour limits either side of the village. Currently, a 50-mile-an-hour limit applies up to both points, termination points of the 30. It's a 50-mile-an-hour limit that spans a long length along the B1188, part of a former accident reduction scheme. So we've assessed this against the criteria in the County Council speed limit policy, and we've determined average speeds of 42 to the north and 38 to the south. These allow us to pursue a 40-mile-an-hour limit along those stretches in accordance with the policy, and this is what has been proposed as shown in Appendix A in green. We've had 7 objections to this proposal on the basis that a 40-mile-an-hour limit will not assist new residents residing in properties to the north of the village on the just off the B1188. There are no footways along this length, and there are concerns that a 30-mile-an-hour limit would be better in terms of pedestrian safety. A comparison has been drawn to nearby Blankney, where a 30-mile-an-hour limit was extended to the north of the village, but the mean speeds here allowed us to do that. They were sufficiently low, whereas here that will not be the case. Officers are not permitted to promote speed limits outside the criteria of the policy, and therefore we are recommending that the objections are overruled so that these 40-mile-an-hour limits as proposed may be introduced. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. We have received a statement from Councillor Rob Kendrick, the local division member for Metheringham Rural, which covers the item area. Over to you, Andrew.
I support the arguments put forward by Scopwick Parish Council in relation to the appeal. In particular, I note the comments regarding the comparison with the 30-mile-per-hour limit in the village of Blankney. For part of the 30-mile-an-hour zone in that village, there are no domestic or other properties fronting onto the road. The church in that section only has occasional services. Also, the mix of speed limit changes proposed for Scopwick would appear to be confusing with changes taking place in a matter of a few metres. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have any comments?
Councillor Hill.
That is the local member, and I fully agree. What pedestrians are we talking about here? Because, unless I'm mistaken, there are no houses on the road, and certainly on the southern bit. And the average speed, I just don't think this is necessary. There's already a speed limit there, and I would not support the change at all.
Thank you. Councillor Wimhurst.
Thank you, Chair. Believe it or not, I'd have to actually agree with Councillor Hill actually on this. As has been mentioned, there doesn't really seem to be any realistic reason to change it. So, I'll just keep it as is. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make a comment here. I'm an advanced driving instructor, and I quite often cross the road at Scopwick. I've come to a right turn and then a left turn, or coming back the other way, a right turn and a left turn. And it's very difficult to get out of that junction at times because of the speed of the traffic coming through. The site coming out from the southern road onto the B1188 going north is very poor, and the speed of the traffic coming down there sometimes you have to go in and out waiting to get a gap in the traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments? Councillor Overton.
Thank you. I understand the complications about having changes of speed limits, but actually we do that quite a lot. And I'm hoping people are starting to recognise that as they approach a village, they should start slowing down, and that, you know, that's what we do. We've got that a lot along the A607 and a number of other places. So I'm feeling that I think people should start to slow down rather than going from, you know, quite a big speed down to suddenly 30. So I was looking for the accident record and I couldn't quite find it here, but I do know someone who had an accident on that very junction they felt it was because of traffic coming very fast along that road, compared with trying to pull out, rather, as our previous speaker said. And that meant they didn't actually have time to get round before the car hit them. And there was a death in that accident. So, and it may not fit into your records, it might be more than 5 years, but it did really strike home to me that actually this is the way we need to start thinking about driving. If you approach a village, start slowing down. Thank you. So I would support the 40. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
About the accident record, can't find it, so hopefully somebody can help me there. I hear what Councillor Whitaker says, but the trouble is, are we then going to say every time there's a junction we're all going to be dropping down to 40 or below? That's the logic of what he's saying, because I mean, and then it becomes quite ridiculous. And actually, if the speed limit is lowered, it'll mean more bunching of traffic. We'll actually get it more, may probably make it more difficult to get out because people will be in a line together. So I just question what is the accident record, please?
In the report, it says there have been no reported injury accidents through Scopwick during the last 5 years.
Councillor Wimhurst.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to agree with the sentiments of Councillor Overton that whilst people should be looking at slowing down when they approach villages, I mean, you should be doing that anyway, you know, when you approach a village and things like that. The problem I've got is, once again, there are always going to be people who are going to see a drop in the 40 and not care. You know, we're back on an enforcement thing again. If we can't enforce it, realistically, you can drop the speed limit to whatever you like. You could put it down to 5 miles an hour. But people are just going to see a sign and then just go through at whatever speed they want. So, I mean, it is a difficult one. But in this instance, I think we should just leave it as is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments?
Thank you. I love when we have a split chamber because it's what scrutiny is for. And we've said that we need to listen to local members, and that's what they're there for. People should be slowing down. Should we be telling people to slow down? Again, it's a cost that we're having to up by telling people to drive sensibly, drive to the speed of the road. I'm minded on one hand to withdraw. I'm also minded on the other hand to put a modification in. I think I'm persuaded toward the modification, the fact that I think that we need to actually speak to the executive on this one again and to see whether it is something that is necessary, taking into account all of the comments that have been made today. I do think that, Councillor Hill makes a very valid point. Why are we reducing speeds down unnecessarily? And then we've got, but Councillor Overton's also, we need to be able to ensure that everybody is safe and entering 30s at 30, not slowing down at a 30, which seems to be the idea that most people have. In which case, then, I think I would like to propose that the committee notes the contents of the report and the proposed speed limit order detailed in Appendix A, has given regard to the objections received and recommends the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport to modify the proposed order with the changes of looking into comments. Councillor Hill, by all means.
The only thing is that I thought, it says here the local member is in support of proposals, but unless I misunderstood, the letter he wrote was against it. So I'm just a bit confused there. What, is he supportive or not?
Unfortunately, this is
No,
the
well,
statement.
we've
Yeah,
had a letter,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I think it's for the officers. They're saying the local member is in support. I would also think if there are no accidents, why isn't it in the report? Is it the fact that it's not convenient to put it in the report? Because the Road Safety Partnership, we know what they're like. They'd have us all doing 10 miles an hour given their own way. So I'm just wondering, A, is the local member was in support, so is he in support or not? I'm a bit confused.
Thank you. I think that some of these reports have been written for quite a while, and it could have been that the local member at that time was in support and has since maybe changed their mind. I would have to look back in the files to confirm that.
Okay, I mean, is it the fact he's in support of the 40, not the 30? This is where I am a bit, and it's probably, as you said, Chairman, probably best. My personal view is I'd like to propose that we leave as is. Is someone prepared to second that?
Councillor Vernon?
Chairman, I'm happy to support Councillor Hill's recommendation, but sort of as if the Executive Councillor is going to consider this, I do think we need to have clarity on the ward members' comments. So if sort of that falls, I would like to ask that the proposal, again, as per my previous suggestion, would be to be in consultation with the division member and yourself as chairman of this committee, not highways planning. We're in today, planning. Thank you.
Because of the confusion, and I must admit, I am with the chamber on this. I feel that the best way forward would probably to defer this item to get clarification on the members' comments, and so that we can then have all the information for next time we bring this for us, and that we'll have another look at this, and we can, really consider what the local members are saying. So I would like to propose that we defer this. I have Councillor Vernon want to come in.
I'm sure that Martha will advise us accordingly because we've proposed and seconded already. I probably need to withdraw my support for the seconding of Councillor Hill's motion and move it onto your one, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of it's the order of votes. So, for instance, we can look to propose and second and have a number of proposals on the table. It would be the order of which vote we take first. But if you don't want to vote on Councillor Hill's proposal to leave the speed limit, thank you, Councillor Silverton, as it is, then yes, we would need you to withdraw your seconding to take that motion off the table effectively, thereby leaving the only motion on the table as deferral. Thank you.
Chairman, I'm happy to do that. Thank you.
In that case, I would like to propose that we refer. We've had seconded by Councillor Vernon. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation to deferral has been carried. Now, before we move over to item 5, I propose that we have a very quick comfort break while we do some technical things for someone who wishes to speak comes online. The time now is 11:35. Can I see you back in the chamber by 1:45? Would that be wonderful? Thank you very much. Thank you. We now move on to the next agenda item 5.1, which is an application by Welton Aggregates Limited. This is for the phased extraction of sand and gravel with revised restoration to include 2 water bodies with surrounded acid grassland, marginal areas of rough long grass, water body embankments and surrounding new native woodland, native sedges, rushes and reeds, including ancillary activities, associated infrastructure and new access from North Kelsey Road at land south of North Kelsey Road, Quaster. The report's recommendation is that conditional planning permission be granted. I would like to invite Mike Daly, Planning Manager, Applications and Enforcement, to introduce the report. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members. I was going to first read out the description of the development, but as you've covered that adequately, then I'll leave that part and we'll go straight to the first slide, please. And the next one, please. That's okay. This is just the slide accompanying the application report. It's not very easy to see on there, but the red line sets out the boundary of the site just to the west of the housing estate. You'll see it on the next slide. If we go to the next one, please. This slide provides some context in respect to this application. The allocation area, which is in red, which is the application area, sorry, is in red, is allocated in the Lincolnshire Minerals and Waste Local Plan Site Locations document under policy SL1, and it's labelled MS09-CL, as an extension to the North Kelsey Road quarry, which I've had illustrated in blue. The quarry operated from the mid-1990s and recently closed following the completion of restoration works. It is now mostly fishing lakes with some arable land. The current application proposes to work the allocation not as an extension, but as a standalone quarry with a new access onto North Kelsey Road. This shows us the location of the site to the west of Quaster in an essentially rural location with an adjacent residential development abutting the eastern site boundary. Next slide, please. This slide is rotated so the north is to the left and North Kelsey Road is to the left. This slide shows how the site is supposed to be laid out. It shows the extent and location of the extraction area in pinks and yellows and the 4 metre high topsoil screening bund proposed to be constructed on the boundary of the residential area that is proposed to be constructed at the outset following soil stripping. It is proposed that the following topsoil soil stripping the site will be worked in 4 phases, with 3 phases of mineral extraction commencing at the southern end of the site and progressing north, with a final phase of removing the ancillary development and restoration works to complete the development. The plan shows the location of a further soil storage bund to the west and the ancillary development comprising parking areas, weighbridge, wheel wash and office/welfare facilities for staff. Next slide, please. This slide shows how the access onto North Kelsey Road will be upgraded to allow for HGV vehicles to safely enter and leave the site. This arrangement allows for HGVs to enter the site and pass in the entrance and on the Hull Road so as not to have lorries waiting in the highway. Slide 5, please. This slide shows the proposed restoration scheme for the site. The scheme is proposed to deliver 2 lakes surrounded by acid grassland. The public footpath, which currently runs across the site, will be temporarily diverted to follow a route around the southern end of the site. This would then be reinstated with additional gravel paths created around the lakes as shown on the plan. As the plan shows, new woodland planting will be carried out to replace the soil mitigation bund, and a hedge planting will be carried out to the southern and western boundaries of the site. Trees would also be planted around the periphery of the ponds. Slide 5, please. The photo on the left shows the road and the visibility from the proposed access location, looking west. And the photo on the right shows the visibility from the access looking east. Slide 6, please. The photo on the left provides a view into the site from the access, and the one on the right shows where the parking areas and ancillary development would be located. Next slide, please. The photo on the left shows the adjacent residential development. The hedge that runs along the development boundary is around 2 metres in height, which gives some idea of how high the 4-metre soil screen bund will be when constructed along the edge of the site. Extraction of minerals will be around 60 metres from the hedge line. The photo on the right shows a view to the west towards the adjoining woodland. The former quarry workers that have now been restored to fishing lakes are further to the south of these trees. Next slide, please. The left image shows the footpath that crosses the site toward the fishing lakes, and which will be diverted south and around the bottom of the development before being reinstated along its original route as part of the restoration. And on the right shows a view from the centre of the site towards the housing development. That's the end of the slides. Turning to the report, on page 69 of the agenda, the first section's background and planning history is background and planning history, which covers the history and general overview and background to the application, which I've already covered in the slides. Turning to the application details on page 70, from paragraphs 4 to 16, I'll just highlight some key information. The site extends to 8.96 hectares, including the access. It is proposed to produce 150,000 tonnes of building and plastering sand. There'll be 4 phases of development, and the duration is proposed to be for 4 years. No permanent plant site is proposed for the site, but mobile plant only, comprising an excavator, loading shovel and a dump truck. 3 12 by 3 metre mobile welfare office buildings will be constructed, and the working hours would be from 0700 to 1800, Monday to Friday, with no weekends or bank holiday working. 20-tonne HGVs, sheeted bulk tippers, would be servicing the site, and it's anticipated there will be 8 HGVs per day, which equates to 16 movements. The HG movements would be split with loads delivered to the applicant's other quarries for ongoing distribution. This would equate to 5 to 6 loads per day to Hibblestow Quarry to the west, and the remainder to Highfield Quarry to the southeast. Staff vehicles would be between 5 and 7 per day, morning and evening. The application part of the report on page 75, paragraph 17, also sets out an assessment of the need or justification for the quarry on the products that it can supply to the aggregates market. The applicant has considered that whilst the site is allocated in the Lincolnshire Minerals and Waste Local Plan, it is not being delivered as an extension to an existing quarry as set out in the plan. However, they contend that this is the only source of fine-grained sands that can meet specific applications, for example, plastering sand and cable trench fill. As such, they have set out at length within the application that they consider the proposal meets the criteria of policy M4 of the Minerals and Waste Local Plan as meeting a proven need that cannot be met from the existing permitted reserves. The application was subject to the Environmental Impact Assessment Regulations 2017 and is therefore supported by a detailed environmental statement. As you will have seen on page 76, the report sets out the chapters and various topics that are covered in the ES. Paragraph 18 to 31 cover these topics, so I don't intend to go into each of these in detail, as you have read the summaries of these chapters in the report. The next section of the report, paragraph 32, sets out the site and its surroundings in more detail, and the following section sets out the relevant national and local policies that are applicable to this proposal. We then turn to page 100, paragraph 37, and the results of consultation and publicity. As you will see, West Lindsey District Council have no objections to the application, but Quaster Town Council have raised objections primarily in relation to the potential for impacts on the nearby residential development, highways and footpathing impacts. And South Kelsey Moor and Moortown Parish Council have also raised issues with the potential for impacts on the use and safety of the public highway and of the local highway network to accommodate additional traffic. West Lindsey District Council were unable to provide comments. Lincolnshire County Council Highways and Lead Local Flood Authority responded to say they do not consider that this proposal would result in a severe impact on the highway with regard to the criteria set out on the MPPF. Lincolnshire County Council Historic Places have no objections, such to a scheme of archaeological mitigation being carried out. Countryside Services, no objections, subject to the agreement of details for the temporary diversion of the footpath. LCC Ecology, no objections, subject to conditions to protect ground nesting birds and other species, and the provision of details to meet the statutory requirement for a biodiversity game plan and a 30-year habitat management and monitoring plan. Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust requests that an appropriate period of aftercare is secured to ensure the delivery of biodiversity gains. No objections were received from Nettleton Parish, the Environment Agency, Historic England, Lincolnshire Police, Active Travel England, the Ministry of Defence or National Airport Safeguarding. Consultees that provided no response following consultation are listed at the bottom of paragraph 37. Page 108, paragraph 38, sets out the details of the public consultations, which comprise 3 rounds. An initial consultation in June 2024 and 2 further rounds of consultation in November 2024 and June 2025 on additional information required under Regulation 25 of the EIA regulations. 105 objections were received from 38 households. The various topics of concern, as you can see, are set out in the bullet points in the report. These cover a broad range of issues relating to the potential impacts from the development on the local area and other more specific concerns, but a number relate to concerns in respect of highways, amenity, landscape, flooding and ecology. Paragraph 109 to 39, page 109, paragraph 39 to 86 sets out the conclusions section of the report, which members will have read and considered. This section sets out the Planning Office's consideration of the environmental statement and application documents and incorporates the relevant policy considerations and both comments and objections raised from statutory consultees and members of the public. This section draws conclusions which include: the site is allocated for mineral extraction, and whilst not proposed to be delivered in accordance with the Minerals and Waste Local Plan, the need for the mineral has been adequately established under Policy M4 of the Minerals and Waste Local Plan. There would be visual and landscape impacts, but these would only be for a temporary period, and the restoration of the site would provide visual enhancement to both the local area and the landscape character. Concerns have been raised with regard to the potential for highway impacts from HGV traffic, but this is considered to be a minimal increase in traffic that will be short in duration. LCC Highways has confirmed they are satisfied that the local road network conditions will be capable of supporting the modest number of traffic movements that will be generated. There would be some potential for impacts from the development with regards to noise and dust, but these will be short-lived and associated with the construction of the soil mitigation bund. It is considered once this bund is in place, the impacts could be effectively mitigated to an acceptable level by implementing noise and dust management plans for the duration of the development. With regards to hydrology and flood risk, the development would not introduce an increase in flood risk to adjacent properties. The resultant restoration would also introduce benefits in terms of biodiversity. The proposal will therefore, on balance, accord with both national and local policies. We then come to page 120 in the recommendations section. The report recommends the committee report and appendices are placed on the statutory register at West Lindsey District Council and made available for public inspection pursuant to the EIA regulations, and that the development is approved subject to biodiversity net gain conditions and planning conditions, and these comprise 30 conditions set out in the report which have been imposed to control the development. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. We have 2 registered speakers, the maximum allowed for each application. As this is the first time that the committee in its current form has had registered speakers, I would like to briefly describe the process for members and anyone watching online. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to give their statement to the committee. This will be enforced by the Democratic Services Officer, with the microphone being switched off after the 3-minute mark. Members of the committee can then ask questions of the speaker. Once the committee has had opportunity to ask any questions, the speaker then retires to be an observer for the remainder of the item. I would like to invite the first registered speaker on Microsoft Teams in opposition to the application, Katie Allenbury, to address the committee. You have 3 minutes when you start talking. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Katie Allenby. I'm speaking in opposition to the quarry as somebody who lives directly 10 metres from the site. We've already seen public reports suggesting this quarry is likely to be approved. If that's the case, consultation risks being reduced to a tick box exercise rather than a meaningful process. Planning law is clear. Each application must be judged on its own merit and harm must be weighed against the benefits. The officer's report calls impacts not significant and temporary, but families here, living here, know that 4 years is not temporary. For a child growing up next to this site, it's their whole childhood spent with HGVs, dust in the air, daily noise. The very need for bunds, dust suppression, wheel washing shows the harm is real and significant. The proposal permanently removes a well-used footpath. A diverted route is not the same. The community loses a safe, accessible path that people of all ages rely on. Once lost, it cannot be replaced. This is a permanent loss of public amenity. The application relies on promises of biodiversity net gain, but surveys were carried out at the wrong times of year and cannot give a reliable picture. In reality, habitats, farmland will be destroyed immediately, while so-called gains decades from now are uncertain and unforeseeable. Certainty of loss today cannot be justified by uncertain promises tomorrow. This is not just about the reports and numbers, it's about children breathing dust, families losing peace of their gardens and homes being devalued. Residents bought houses here for the countryside views and the clean air. They now face years of disruption and an eyesore on their doorstep. Bunds and wildflowers may mitigate some impacts, but they cannot remove the harm. In summary, consultation must be meaningful, not predetermined. The noise and dust impacts are severe. The loss of public right of way is permanent. Biodiversity gain is uncertain, and the harm to residents' daily lives is undeniable. I therefore urge you to refuse this application and ask you what is the point of consultation if harm to residents is dismissed as inevitable. Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution. Do any members have any questions to the speaker?
Councillor Whitworth. Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. As somebody who used to live in South Wales next to a quarry that produced stone, and in fact only lived within 70 yards of the edge of the quarry, the only thing that ever worried us was when the blasting took place on a Thursday afternoon at 4 o'clock. Other than that, the dust and the lorries weren't a factor at all because they were controlled by the operators of the quarries.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Yes, there's one further question of Mike, actually. You said on page 70...
Can I just, to say, it's questions to Katie.
Oh, right, okay.
The questions are to the speaker only.
Okay, thank you.
Any question to the speaker? Mariana, over to you.
I'd like to hear Katie's response, thank you, to that question.
I think it was more of a statement to say that the dust
I think it was a statement, and I think she has a right of reply.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
So if we'd like to come back on the statement, Katie, please do.
Yeah, I just would like to stress that they're saying it's not significant, it's temporary, but to the residents living here, it does feel significant. And temporary is not daily, 4 years of daily, that is just not what we class as temporary. And we do feel it is significant, the impact.
Thank you. Does Marianne over to you.
Thank you. It does say that there'd be significant impact on 5 of the viewpoints that were being assessed. And I just wondered if you felt that the mitigation that's proposed for that, the 4-metre bund, for example, would be adequate, also taking the buildings into account. Thank you.
For me, the bunds actually being needed, it does show that it is how those things are needed, how the impact is significant and it's real. I don't think the bunds are going to mitigate, you know, the effect of it. I don't think that, you know, is not something that covers it for us.
Thank you.
Any final questions, Katie? Please, Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so Katie, you live on the housing estate that's going to border this quarry. When you bought your house there, was there any mention of possible quarrying at all in this area?
Not at all. Not at all. We bought it with the idea that we was next to some fields, country views. We are actually a property that is next to, so we have a fence that actually is going to, it's directly next to the field. So no, there was no mention of it at all.
And one other question. So, as you're so close to this quarry, have the residents got concerns about possible subsidence as a result of digging the ground out so close to a new residential estate?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's certainly something that's a high concern for the residents. Yeah, it is a big concern.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Katie, for your remarks just now in this meeting. You referred to consultation in your statement. So far, how do you believe that consultation has taken place for you and your neighbours? Has it been adequate, and have you received the information you've required and requested? Thank you.
I think, I'm not sure that everybody feels that way. I think that most people feel that it's a done deal already, that we've seen reports that say that it's likely to be approved, and I don't think everyone was aware of that it's at this stage, and people feel like that it's the stage that it's at now, it's just a tick box to get approved and be passed. So I don't feel the local residents feel that way, that it's been, I think that most of them feel that it's been something that's gone through, and it is a done deal as such.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Yes, Katie. Obviously, on this proposal, there'll be a bund at the bottom of your garden. I'm thinking from what was said that there's currently a hedge there. Was that the hedge you're referring to? So in terms of what you understand from the developers, how far away will this bund be from your boundary on the garden? If you're actually next door to it. So what's your understanding of what developers have told you, how far away this bund will be?
Well, I believed it was the site is going to be as close as 10 metres, but I don't know if I just picked up on a meeting that it said 60 metres, but however, on those pictures that were shown in the meeting of the plan, those pictures was taken from some distance, so the pictures didn't show a true reality of the field where the housing is. And I know that the mapping does, where it shows the diagrams, but certainly the pictures from the main road, for me, wasn't a reality of pictures. But yeah, I believe that it could be up to 10 metres away from the edge of our property.
Thank you. Councillor Overton.
Was the first speaker the applicant, and should we be questioning the first speaker as well?
No, the applicant's next. The first speaker was the officer.
This is it. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask Katie, so we've already heard a little bit about what the general feeling is of the consultation period. So is the general perception of the people in the local area that the council, being a faceless body far removed from where this quarry is going to take place, will actually make the decision based on rules and regulations and not take into any consideration the feelings of the local people and just ride roughshod over them?
Yeah, I do think that that's probably the general feeling, that it's something that's, yeah, that's how it is. Do you want to expand a little bit more on your question? I'm not sure I'm understanding it fully.
Sorry, do you feel that in any way that the local residents think that their feelings will be taken into consideration at all, or whether they'll just be automatically discounted?
Absolutely not. Most people that I've spoken with feel that it doesn't matter what they do or say, and that their feelings are certainly not, it doesn't matter. That most people feel that it's disregarded as to what the community feel, and that their voices are not heard. That is the, I haven't heard anybody feel any other than that.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Councillor.
Redfern. Okay.
I pressed it too quick. Redfern.
My question is there anything that would, are you totally against it and no matter what happens you don't want it, or would you accept it if it wasn't as close to your boundary, if they moved it back 50, 60, 100 metres? Would that then satisfy you? What is, is there a criteria? Thank you.
Personally, I am against it. I would need to look into it if things was moved, and I would obviously want to speak to the other residents, because I wouldn't want to speak alone and it be a single person thing. But I'd need to have a look at the effects of it being in a different place. I would need to see the difference and have a better understanding if it was moved more. But I do feel totally against it at the moment, having not seen and understand the difference of the impact if it was moved.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, wonderful. Can I just say thank you, Katie, for addressing the committee. I do hope you feel that you have been listened to, and we do really appreciate you addressing the committee as a representative. We now move to the second and final registered speaker, the agent for the application, and speaking in favour, Oliver Craven. To address the committee, you have 3 minutes once you start speaking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks, members, for letting me have this opportunity. Just like to raise a few key points regarding the proposals. Firstly, the scale of it. We were referring to this as a quarry. Now, we're looking at 150,000 tonnes, which now sounds a large number, to be extracted and restored within 4 years. In quarrying terms, that is a very small development, that many quarries extract that much in a single year. In terms of the actual extraction area, that's going to be about 60 to 70 metres away from the nearest residential property. And we're looking at a depth of 3.5 metres. So we're not a deep quarry. All the infrastructure associated with this will be temporary, and there'll be relatively little plant involved. As a result of this relatively small-scale operation, the impacts of the operations are significantly reduced from those often associated with quarries. And there'll be very minimal processing. Most of the material will be processed off-site. Secondly, and not wanting to sound like a Marks and Spencer advert, but it's not just any sand. We're looking at a very specialist sand previously allocated for building sand and plastering sand. A new use over the recent years has come to light. It's what we call an ENAT sand. It's a very low conductivity sand that is used in backfilling of cable trenches, electricity cable trenches. That's obviously got a significant benefit within Lincolnshire with the number of renewable projects that are coming on. Currently, previously we had to import this sand from Messingham in North Lincolnshire. That's now exhausted, so we're importing it further afield. And this development offers the potential to source that within Lincolnshire itself. Thirdly, the restoration of the site. We've currently got an agricultural field of very limited ecological value. What we are proposing is to, within 4 years, restore this site back to a mixture of water bodies, hedgerows, grassland. And with regard to the concerns raised by the previous speaker, the public footpath will be reinstated to its original line. So there will be no loss of public amenity in that. In fact, the restored landform will offer potentially a greater amenity value. As you've heard, it's an allocated site. There've been no technical objections sustained to this. It's in line with the strategic policies. All the submitted technical assessments have been reviewed by the appropriate bodies, and I therefore urge you to vote in line with the officer's recommendation and approve the development as proposed.
Thank you for your contribution. Do any members have any questions to the speaker? Councillor Hill?
Yeah, just on the public footpath. So obviously it's going to be a lake. So just to explain how it's going to work, that you're going to restore it.
During the actual working of the site, the public footpath will be diverted around the south. Phase 1 extraction area is to the south of that footpath. Once that is finished extraction-wise, we'll move north of the footpath, the original footpath route, and use the material stripped from phases 2 and 3 to reinstate the footpath up to original ground levels.
There'll be a footpath and there'll be water either side.
That's it. The footpath will in effect divide the restored landform into 2 water bodies.
So I've got 2 other questions, if that's okay. Obviously you talked 60, 70 metres away from the houses where the quarrying. So how far away will the bund be from the houses?
I think, as was mentioned previously, I think it's approximately 10 metres from the boundary.
The bund will be 10 metres, but the quarrying will be 70 or 60
yes.
or something. Final question, in terms of restoration, have you, is there a plan, sorry if I've missed it, to put some, make it more attractive so you have a lake with trees and stuff around it?
Absolutely, I think there's a plan in the committee report. So it's essentially going to be 2 lakes bisected by the restored footpath. The bund that you've heard of behind the resi properties, that will be planted up as an area of woodland, and then all the sort of ancillary land around the workings will be restored to a mixture of grassland, sedges, as set out in the fairly lengthy description.
The bund will stay?
No, the bund will be removed and there'll be planting. The soils contained within that bund will be used in restoration.
Wonderful. Councillor Wimhurst.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report and presentation on that. It was just a quick one, really, just with regards to the timeframes. So, overall, you're sort of saying it's not that amount, that much we need to take out, and it's taken 4 years, but other companies can remove the same amount in total within 1 year. So why are we taking 4 years when we could potentially have it done a lot sooner? Thank you.
Simply, it comes back in a large sense to market demand. If we suddenly took 150,000 tonnes of sand out in 1 year, we'd probably end up stockpiling it somewhere. And secondly, the impact of taking 150,000 tonnes out in 1 year would be significantly greater. In terms of you'd have a significant number of vehicle movements every day, whereas spreading out over a longer time period, albeit they're the same number overall, it won't lead to any transport issues and will reduce the overall impacts.
Thank you. You can come back.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I appreciate that with the increased vehicles and things, but surely doing it quicker, you know, if we could do it a lot quicker, you get a little bit of short-term pain, but long-term gain, realistically, we just get it moved out, get it done. I mean, it's not our residents' responsibilities to where you'd like to warehouse or stockpile the materials. So, you know, if it is another option to do it quicker, we might need to look into that. Thank you.
I feel it would be quite difficult to do quicker without leading to any significant inefficiencies or impacts resulting from that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman. A question to the applicant. You clearly heard the concerns by the local resident when Katie spoke about dust and noise, and you've answered questions regarding the footpath. And also I asked her regarding consultation, and it was seen as not being adequate, and there's still lots of questions and concerns. So this is an if this application is approved, what is your plan to consult with residents, keep residents informed of any news, information, do you have any questions and concerns, is one question. And Chairman, if I can ask another question regarding, again, if this is approved, and regarding the bund, if work starts and the bund is not adequate, and if there are still issues with dust or regarding wind direction or health concerns regarding dust and noise, would that be reassessed and re-evaluated if that is not adequate after work starts? Thank you.
In terms of consultations, obviously the council, as we've heard from Mr Daly, undertook several rounds of consultation on this. Obviously that's not the applicant's position to sort of consult on it themselves. Going forward, if it is approved, if residents felt it was necessary, I'm sure the applicant would be agreeable to a quarry liaison committee. That's something that we do sometimes do on sites where the residents feel they've not been adequately informed of something, so that is a possibility. I mean, whether or not it needs to be formal, I don't know, but the applicant would be agreeable to work, you know, in keeping residents informed. And I have completely forgotten your second. Oh, noise and dust, wasn't it? Sorry. Yeah, one of the pre-commencement conditions that has been proposed is to submit a series of plans detailing how we will control noise and dust emissions. So what we can make sure that is included within that information is that they're not just something that's approved at the start of the development. There'll be a sort of a living document, if you like, that if there are issues arising, that we can go back and revisit those documents. Obviously on a mineral site it is subject to monitoring by the council on a regular basis, so there is the opportunity to review these and update if and when any action is required.
Thank you. Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions, if that's okay. So the heavy good vehicles, they're going to be split. Some will go up through Quaster and some will go out the other way through Brandy Wharf. I have concerns about that because certainly in Quaster, at one point the road goes down to single carriageway and is controlled by traffic lights. And extra heavy vehicles moving through Quaster can only cause more vibration to a historic town. Going the other way out through Brandy Wharf, again the road goes down to single carriageway over the bridge over the Ancombe, which is traffic light controlled, and there are already severe problems with subsidence on the road between Brandy Wharf and Snitterby. So I have concerns that the extra heavy good vehicles will only exacerbate that problem. Now, the industrial estate to the west of Quaster, I'm reliably told by residents that when that industrial estate was built, the planning permission included the provision of a link road to the A46, but for some reason that was never done, and West Lindsey District Council didn't enforce that. Is there any reason why the link road to the quarry could not go through to the A46 between Nettleham and Quaster?
Off the top of my head, I think it would be a very difficult link road to put in, looking at the number of potential landowners involved. I can't quite picture the number of landowners that would be involved sat here, but I think it would be disproportionate to any improvements that it did. Like, I'm afraid I can't answer your question on the industrial estate access road.
No, I appreciate that.
But I don't think it would be viable, it certainly wouldn't, I'm sure, to put an access road for such a small operation out to the 46.
The reason I asked the question is because I'm quite familiar with the roads, with North Kelsey Road. The road is hardly wide enough. If you get two HGVs coming in different directions, there isn't really room for them to pass. They already get extra HGVs along that road as a result of the industrial estate, and this will just increase that number. The road itself is in poor condition. Although it has been widened, the strips down each side, due to the heavy traffic, are starting to tear away. There is no footpath or cycleway along that road to North Kelsey. And as I said before, the extra heavy good vehicles causing vibration to the historic town of Quaster, it's not really acceptable. So that is why I proposed that a link road be put through to the A46 instead. I realise it has cost implications, but if this sand is as valuable and as rare as you say it is, then really I don't see the cost implications being a problem.
Absolutely, I can see that point. I mean, I would have to defer, not being a transport specialist, I have to defer to the specialists that have produced the reports in support of the application, and Lincolnshire's own highways team that have reviewed those and have confirmed that they don't believe there will be any significant impacts. So, absent of any technical reason for requiring an additional road, I can't see that it would be defensible in planning terms.
Well, I appreciate your opinion, but as I said, I don't feel North Kelsey Road is suitable at all. Also, I have a number of other questions. So,
Councillor Bean, should we just elect Marianne Overton, Councillor Overton? I know she's been waiting patiently, and then we'll come back for your further questions.
I'll defer to Councillor Overton.
Thank you very much. I'm interested in what alternatives have been considered, and because I understand, although it was in the plan as an extension to the quarry, this is not an application for an extension, and therefore it comes under the planning applications for a new site, for which you have to prove that this material is found nowhere else, and that's why you've got it. And yet on page 76 you said that you've not considered any alternatives because you own that piece of land. So it seems to me that you're not fulfilling that criteria. Thanks.
Certainly we're not aware of any other available sites with that sand underlying them. Nobody else has brought forward a potential source of that site, that material, sorry. So as an allocated plan within the site, that's why that was brought forward.
Sorry, Chairman, there is an alternative mentioned in the paperwork, not we're now Greater Lincolnshire, so North Lincolnshire is counted the same area, presumably, so therefore it would be within the same area coming from North Lincolnshire, which is the area that's suggested. But I think the other thing I would like to just pick up is, are you thinking of fulfilling particular contract, and that's why you've set this particular amount of material? Because it seems to me that there is a risk, I guess, a concern that might be in the public's mind that the quarry could be extended up to the edge of your bund, because your bund is not, you've left yourself room, haven't you, another 40 metres or so. And I just wonder if there is a set amount that you're expecting to fulfil, and is there a possibility that you'd be extending in future? Thank you.
With regards to I think the mention of North Lincolnshire, the ENAT sand has been sourced from, I think, the Messingham area in North Lincolnshire. That resource has now been exhausted, so we're having to bring it from further afield. I think it's sort of north of Doncaster area now that we're having to source it from. And in respect of the area and the volume, that follows up on the allocation of the site within the local plan. So that is the area that has been considered, has been drilled, and that was really the defining parameters of the application.
Thank you. So lastly, if these cables were not going to be dug underground, if there was a change in the policy, they decided to put them as pylons, say, from these new solar sites, does that mean you wouldn't need this sand? Thank you.
It's not just cables from sort of big national infrastructure projects. It's on a much smaller scale as well. Take, for instance, all the new residential developments that are occurring throughout the county. They've all obviously got electricity cables going into them, and this sand is used in a lot of those developments, and that's where a lot of the demand comes from. Whilst individual demands might not seem very large compared to the big national infrastructure projects, nevertheless, over the number that crop up do create a good market demand for it.
It can also be used for building sand, you said, so I don't know how special the sand is, but thank you.
It's, building sand, plastering sand, it's a very fine grained sand. I think one of the key elements is it's got a very low iron content, which helps lower its conductivity, but that's also quite good for use in plastering sand. I think it helps take away from any discoloration issues.
Thank you. Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Chair. As part of the planning application, an archaeological survey was taken, and that discovered Iron Age relics on the site, I believe, as mentioned in the application. What mitigation have you put in place to avoid damaging any in-the-ground archaeology before you dig it up?
If planning permission were to be granted, there'd be a written scheme of investigation agreed with the county archaeologist, and that would set out the appropriate way forward of recording any archaeology that is there. I think the archaeological evaluation trenching that was undertaken actually discovered less archaeology than was initially suspected to be there, and the council have the council's heritage officer has agreed that this is an appropriate way forward, and that will actually produce quite a bit of information that we wouldn't have other than if this development were to go ahead.
One final question, if I may. Regarding the BNG, will all the BNG be on site?
I believe that will be the case, yep, and it will be obviously sore subject with the officers at the minute, 'cause I think we're trying to work out the exact mechanisms of how BNG will be secured and delivered. But yeah, on site, significant gains over the existing, including introducing some significant water bodies that obviously aren't present on the site, and that will then be maintained for a minimum of 30 years.
That was going to be one of my next questions, because in the planning application, in one part, it mentions 5 years.
Yeah, I think that there was an earlier submission of this planning application, I believe, prior to BNG becoming mandatory. So that's something that may have slipped through. But no, it will be 30 years. There will be a necessity to monitor it over the 30-year period at the applicant's expense. And then the council will review those monitoring reports, and the applicant will have to, in effect, pay for that monitoring upfront. So there's no cost to the council of that 30-year monitoring.
Thank you. That was going to be my next question. What's to stop you digging the sand out and then scarpering off?
Yeah, it's all very new, the BNG, I think, to all parties, but we are getting there, I think.
And do you have a management and maintenance plan?
That is required as one of the pre-commencement conditions, along biodiversity gain plan, habitat management and monitoring plan, construction environmental management plan. I think those are the three main ones.
So do you have those in place?
We don't at the minute, but we would have to have those in place and approved by the council prior to any sand being extracted.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions... just in time. Councillor Hill.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the number of vehicles using and then coming back to why I couldn't do it faster. So we are talking about 8 a day, which doesn't seem a lot in terms of getting it done and dusted earlier than the 3 to 4 years.
Absolutely, it's not a huge number of vehicles. I think it wouldn't just be HGV movements that would increase if it was done quicker. You'd have to have more plant on site. You'd have to be operating more of the time. I think as it stands, there will be significant periods where very little happens on site. But if you were to have more kit in, more excavators, more vehicle movements, all of a sudden the potential impacts do start ramping up.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, I'd like to thank Oliver for answering the questions, and if he wishes to take his seat back within the chamber. I'll now open up for any members of the committee who wish to make comment on the application. Councillor Hill.
Well, I think, Councillor Overton, just clarify what this planning status of this particular site is, so we're all very clear in terms of, in the local plan, where it sits and all the rest of it. That's the first question.
Right, this piece of land was allocated in the local plan, in the site locations document, as an extension to North Kelsey Quarry. It was allocated to meet the needs of the council's aggregate needs, which was assessed through the development of the plan, and it was allocated to make a contribution. The site closed about 4 years ago, and this land changed hands, and this applicant is now coming forward to bring it forward as a standalone quarry, but it's still going to meet that need that was established at the outset when the local plan was drawn up. So it's a parcel of land with mineral in it, which was foreseen as being capable of delivering that mineral to meet the needs of the county.
So where does it sit in the current mineral plan? This field or these fields?
It's an allocated site.
It is allocated,
it is an
presumed
allocated.
to be
Yes.
quarried at some time.
Yes.
Second question is, in terms of transport, it does say policy, I think it's DM14, about, it shouldn't be, the transport should be adequate. And I certainly take the local member's point, the roads aren't very good, they're only little minor roads. So in terms of the highways comments, can you just, why are they saying this is okay?
I think all the Weirs officers can go on is the guidance of the highways officers. I can read you, they looked at the National Planning Practice Framework, which sets out what they need to take into consideration. See if I can find it. No, I had a quote. Sorry, bear with me a second. Just a piece from their comments. I mean, it basically says, paragraph 18J, development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network would be severe.
Yeah, that's my point. I've read that.
Yes. We take the judgment of the highway authority. They're the experts. If they came back to us and said that those roads are totally unsuitable, we'd have to take that on board in consideration of the application. But at the moment, that's not what they've said.
Yeah, I suppose the issue is I'm trying to justify, you've only received comments from them, but if I don't think I've ever been down this road, but it sounds like a very narrow track. So there will be damage because you are talking about 20-ton vehicles going down. And there will be some, and with president. So I'm just, all we're saying is highways say it's okay. I'm just questioning why they're saying it's okay.
I've no idea. We're guided by their advice. Probably because it's not many vehicles. There's only eight vehicles a day, 16 movements in a 10-hour day. That's probably why they don't think it's an issue, but I can't really put words into their mouths. I can only deal with what they sent in.
Thank you. Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chair. Mike, in your report, I think it was on page 70 or 71, you said 20-ton lorries. Are these 20-ton lorries when they're empty or when they're full, weighing 44 tonnes?
They carry 20 tonnes.
They carry 20 tonnes?
They carry 20
So they actually
tonnes, yeah.
weigh 44 tonnes?
I don't know what they weigh, but it'd be more than 20 tonnes. Yeah.
Something like that on the road?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, following on from Councillor Hill's comments, I would like to dispute the findings of the Highway Department. These roads are not suitable. It would not be safe. Like I say, they already have issues with the HGVs from the industrial estate, so I would dispute their findings on that. I do have a number of other points, if I may. So you say this land was allocated for quarrying, and that was prior to the housing estate being built. As the housing estate has now been built right up to the edge, and the residents were not made aware of this when they purchased their houses, I think that needs to be looked at again as to whether this land is actually suitable for a quarry now that there is a large housing estate right up to the edge of it. The other thing I'd say, sorry, would you like to come back on that one?
Carry on. Carry on.
And the other thing I'd say is, Quaster Town Council are against this. South Kelsey Parish Council are against this. They are the main ones that are going to be affected by this. Surely we need to take their feelings into consideration, because it also seems to me that the actual general public, the actual ordinary person just trying to have their quiet life is completely ignored and overrun. They don't seem to be taken into consideration at all. It's very much like Katie said, it's a tick box exercise. Oh, we've had a consultation and we're still going to go ahead with it regardless. So I'm sorry, but based on everything I've heard today, I object to this planning application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Hill.
Just on the whether people knew or not. So if they say they had a search when they bought their properties, what would the search show?
If they,
a conveyancing search.
Not being an expert on conveyancing, but if they'd asked for a minerals search, it would have brought up that the site was allocated next to the house they were going to purchase. If they did it post 2017 when the plan was adopted, the site for the housing had planning permission since 2005, and it was in the local plan for that area from when was it from 2006. So the land was allocated knowing that there was housing development going to be there, and that it was considered that appropriate mitigation could be put in place to make the development acceptable.
So to be clear, that when it was originally the houses were built and permission was granted, if you'd done a search, that should have shown up that the permission there was a potential for quarrying on next door.
I would expect so, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Wimhurst.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank everyone for all of their comments, statements, and everything else. But in light of I'd have to completely agree with what Councillor Bean was saying a minute ago. And quite honestly, I'd like to move to reject the application, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments?
I'm pleased we've got a mover. I just need some wording, though. What are we hanging our hats on for the reasons for refusal? Or we can open it up if anybody else wants to come in with some words if you need some assistance.
Yeah, go on.
Councillor Hill, if you've got...
I do have concerns about so I do wonder if we can get more information from the Highways Department to say why they have not raised concerns even about this, but I just wonder if that is a step we should take next, but it's only a suggestion. Apart from that, I am concerned that what is a reasonable grounds for refusing this application, and then we get into appeals and all the rest of it. So I think finding valid reasons to refuse it is going to be a valid planning reasons, notwithstanding the very justifiable concerns of the people who live nearby. But I'm apart from the highways, I personally are struggling to find a planning reason to object, but that's my own personal view.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Yeah, and I'm with you. I appreciate all the comments made. It is a planning application, therefore we need to look at reasons for refusal and be able to justify that. Are there any other comments, Councillor Bean?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to come back on what Councillor Hill said about the searches and that. Unfortunately, when most people buy a house, the only search they have done is by the mortgage company, and they are not worth the paper they're written on. There's a lot of assumptions made that the search, So that's one point, and the other thing I'd like to do is, so the motion I'd like to put forward is that we reject this planning application based on the grounds that North Kelsey Road is not suitable, regardless of what the highways team say.
Okay. We've had comment from highways. I mean, if we feel that highways need to relook at it, that would be, then we would have to defer it to allow highways to come back if we have concerns with that. We've already had a comment from highways, and that is in the report. Regardless how we feel about that, I mean, the only thing we could do as a committee is go back and ask highways, could you please relook at it? Could you please give some more expansion on the policies that you have used to actually put your report forward, which would allow us more time to actually then come back to committee if that is what you wish to do as a deferral. That would be probably a way to do it. But
could I propose that then, Chairman? Because the problem is, if we say on highways immediately, if I was the applicant, I'd say, well, hold on, your professional officers have said there's no problem, which immediately gives an issue for us. So I think that suggestion you're making is that further consideration, investigation by highways, perhaps if highways could get to the meeting whenever this next meeting is, to justify themselves, and then we could take a vote.
I think, a highways officer here would be nice to, as it is such a contentious point. Councillor Taylor did have his hand up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know we spent some time on this already this morning, but however, there still seems to be some questions unanswered. I agree with your comments and concerns on Councillor Hill. I don't know if you proposed the deferral or Councillor Hill did, but I'm prepared to second that, because we do need answers to questions, because this affects the lives of those residents nearby. We heard from the concerned resident earlier today. We do need to get those answers before we can actually make a decision. Thank you.
And Councillor Overton.
Thank you very much. I support the comments made. We've got the roads 4.1 metres wide, and they're talking about one passing place. We talked about HGVs, but there's also the other traffic that be associated with it. I'm not sure what that is, so maybe we could have that looked at the same time. And the other one is any impact on other roads, so not just the immediate access, but the other roads. There'd be obviously a knock-on effect. But the other thing I'd like to raise is the policy that I raised earlier. What is written in the papers here is very clear, that although it was allocated as an extension, this is not an extension. This is a new application, and therefore has to prove, and just to read it out, proven need, that the need cannot be met from the existing permitted reserves. And I haven't heard enough to make me feel that that has been fulfilled. So I'd be quite interested in a proper study of that, because they have clearly said, as I said earlier on page 76, that they've not considered any alternatives because this is the piece of land they own. So I would be really interested in extending, if we're going to delay anyway, let's have a look at that as well. they have to prove that this is a unique requirement. And then if it is a unique requirement, why is that not in our plan? I know we have sand and gravel as one of the criteria that's assessed for need in the county, and then we look at where that could be provided from. I've never seen a separate category that says a particular kind of fine sand that's required for plaster. I don't think we have a category like that in our minerals plan. So why is it now coming into action here? So I'm just trying to see how this fits with our strategies. Thank you.
Wonderful. Councillor Hills, did you? Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask, if officers have taken notes of the members' concerns as a whole, and we could actually put that back to them. Councillor Bean, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, just going on to what Councillor Overton was talking about, the applicant has already made it clear that the same sand is available north of Doncaster. The fact is they want to dig it out here because it's got less transport costs and it's going to be nice and close to all these solar farms and cables that various NSIPs want to put into Lincolnshire. So as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't meet that requirement.
Okay. I mean, we don't know where they're going to use it and what they're going to use it for, but I think we've had a really strong debate on this, and I feel that although it's not come to a resolution, we have had a moved for it to be. Oh, hold on 2 seconds.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies if I've jumped the gun and I've cut you off in making comments, but it looked like you were summarising where the committee had got up to leading forward to potentially taking it to a vote on the deferral proposal. I just need to advise members, I'm sure you all know from your training, but it'd be remiss of me not doing my job if I didn't, in deferring the item for more information from the Highways department on the application, and also some more information from the applicant as to need to satisfy the policy as per Councillor Mrs Overton's comments, then you would be restricted then when you came back to consider the application to only then considering the new information put forward. You are thereby deeming the rest of the application acceptable. And for instance, if the committee were then looking to refuse the application, they would only be reasonably entitled to do so on grounds of the highways and the failing to meet the needs policy. I just need the committee to be aware of that in taking this vote forward. Thank you, Chairman.
The other issue I raised earlier that I'm not entirely had satisfaction on is the visual intrusion on the 5 of the 12 significant viewpoints, and that might be something we would want to consider at a later date. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Chairman, to come back in. We just need to be very clear then in going into the vote what the reasons for deferral are and exactly what information the committee feels they need to be given to them in addition to what they have already in order to make a resolution on this one way or another at the next meeting. So, Councillor Ms Overton, obviously you're entitled to ask for more information about the impact on the viewpoints, but that needs to be clearly put into the proposal and seconded. The way you just said, perhaps you'll consider it later. It needs to go into the proposal and the applicant needs to know what they need to bring back before you to then make that final resolution. Thank you.
Councillor Hill, as proposer, do you have...
Well, do you want me to propose something so we can move on?
Well, we've had a proposal from yourself to defer.
Defer on the grounds of the justification in terms of impact of highways, not being are they sufficient for a refusal, the impact of the viewpoints as described by Councillor Overton, and the justification of need in the Lincolnshire Local Minerals Plan.
Yep, the uniqueness of that.
Is there anything else? Happy for any other suggestions? No. Right, okay, well I propose that then, Chairman.
Okay, we have Councillor Murray wishes to come in.
I'm not convinced about the effect on the amenity of residents. I'd like to understand that a bit better. That's amenity for residents.
Apologies, Chairman, to cut in. You did look at me, so I took it as permission and I'm going with it. Councillor Murray, would need a little bit more information. I understand your concerns, but we need to sort of almost narrow it down a little bit. Amenity in terms of noise, dust, highways, obviously.
General amenity. That's the whole thing.
Obviously, a great deal of information. I was going to say, a great deal of information has already been put across in terms of the amenity. So it's more where you see the deficiencies in the information that you've been given in order to make a decision on amenity.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that the applicants can. He's certainly not convinced me that there won't be a lot of amenity to residents. I'm not convinced.
The rules around deferral are that notwithstanding the wide breadth of information put forward, obviously, because a great deal of work has gone in on behalf of the applicants already, and obviously your officers in assessing that, and obviously the consultees being, you know, for instance, the Highways Department, etc., etc. So a great deal of work has already gone into the application. In terms of deferral, it's that the committee have identified that there are some gaps in the information that has been provided to them in order for them to make a decision, and that they cannot make a decision until those gaps in their knowledge have been filled. I do think to just say you're not convinced about the impacts, the amenity impacts, is a little bit too broad to fall within the remit of deferral. So unless we can narrow it down a little bit, and I mean, potentially some of that's going to be potentially might come under the impact on highways and the viewpoints that has obviously already been decided to defer. But to sort of just to put that general, we need some more information on amenity, I think is a bit too broad, that the applicant needs to, because obviously we have to give them some steer as to what the gaps in your knowledge are to make a decision in the proposition.
I'm thinking particularly about dust and noise.
22, there's a whole load of which we've conditional on dust mitigation, noise mitigation and protection. So I'm just asking advice, because that as part of the conditions we put on, or proposing to put on this application, does that not cover that? I'm asking the question. This is paragraph 22.
Yeah, I think in terms of dust and noise, we have looked at that completely in terms of the applicant provided some information. We went out to consultancies, for noise and dust consultancies to have that information reviewed. That information was reviewed and we went back to the applicant with some more information, a request for more information regarding noise and dusts, and that has been fulfilled. So I think we are sort of struggling in terms of what else we would be asking them for in relation to noise and dust, given that we've already gone back on a couple of occasions. So unless perhaps a committee can be specific in terms of where they think those emissions are in relation to noise and dust, I think it is difficult to say that the applicant hasn't done all the necessary work, particularly for those two topics.
Thank you. Yes, I think reading through the conditions that have been put in, dust and noise, and that has been conditioned, which should satisfy the committee that we will be conditioning those. I'm conscious we've talked a lot, and I think we've got to the point where we've had a mover of Councillor Hill with reasons for deferral. Councillor Taylor, you did second that, and you are happy to second with the additional wording. In that case, then I would like to call the committee have a vote on the way of hands to defer. All those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? I believe it was a full house. Well, we've put it through. The motion is carried, and it will come back to the committee on.
Sorry. Is it would a site visit be helpful or not? Is the question. I'm only asking. Yeah.
We've just finished. We've just finished dealing with it for this meeting, Councillor Hill. That's perhaps something that needed to have been brought up before we voted on deferral. The matter's obviously now been postponed for further information to be gathered. If you
so why can't we just have a site visit? Or?
You would need to have, as part of the debate, in a similar way to deferral, identified what it is that you needed to achieve by going on site, because obviously the officer's presentation and report is ordinarily enough for you to be able to determine an application without going on site. So you would need to have determined what it is that you needed to gain from the site visit. That would obviously have to have been debated by your...
We've had the three conditions, haven't we? I'm just saying, do we have to formally...
Yes, it would need to be voted on.
Why is that?
That's procedure. A site visit isn't automatic unless...
It's in our regulations, is it?
Yes, a site visit isn't automatic unless either officers have pre-bringing an application to committee feel that that's what they think the committee members need to be able to determine application, or obviously committee members are entitled to bring up a request for a site visit as part of their debate of an item, but it would need to be voted on as part of determination. It doesn't necessarily preclude you from bringing up a site visit when this matter comes back to be...
I think we'd want to get, personally I think we'd want to get this determined, because it's otherwise it's going to be months, isn't it? Okay, well, so we'll just have to drive out and look for ourselves. Presume we're allowed to do that.
As long as you don't trespass, yes, but that's a different remit of law. Thank you.
There is a public footpath.
There is a footpath, I've just reminded, so that until, yes.
I think, can I just say, Chairman, I've never heard anything like this. I've been a councillor a long time, and it's good practice to have a site visit, especially for the people who live in that area. And I think for the officer to be obstructive in this way, I've never seen it before, and I think we should have a site visit.
Okay. Well, we have voted and the motion was carried unanimously, and so we will move over to agenda item number 6. If you wish to catch me after the meeting to discuss, we can.
In regards, sorry, your microphone wasn't on, so I'll just repeat what for the public stream. Just regarding if claiming mileage, I would have to double check in terms of that with the, but I will need to consult with that, but I'll get back to you on that. Thank you very much, Councillor Hill.
Okay, moving on to last item on the agenda, which is now item 6.1, application by Beacon Fen Energy Park Limited for the development consent order to install solar PV panels to generate up to 400 megawatts of power and associated infrastructure, including 600 megawatt battery energy storage system, access provision to the 40,000 kilovolt underground cable corridor to facilitate the connection to National Grid substation at Beacon Fen. The report's recommendation to the committee is to A, approve the submission of the local impact report at Appendix B to the Beacon Fen Solar Examination Authority, and to B, inform the examining authority of the County Council's objection to the Beacon Fen Energy Park Development Consent Order application. I would like to invite Justin Foster, Infrastructure Manager, to introduce the report. Thank you.
Point of order, Chairman. Could I just declare an interest, if I may? I'm an active person involved locally in an application for my area. This is not my area, so I am approaching this particular, every application on its own merits. So I've come to this meeting with an open mind on that application because it's not the same as the application where I live. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. That will be noted. Justin.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, members. This agenda item relates to an application that's been made by Beacon Fen Energy Park Limited to the Secretary of State for a development consent order for the construction and operation of a solar energy park. The Council is a consultee in the development consent order process and is required to provide its comments on the application to an examining authority appointed by the Secretary of State, who will, following a 6-month examination, make a recommendation as to whether the development consent order should be granted or not. The Council is not, therefore, the determining authority for this proposal. The committee report under consideration today seeks approval for the submission of a local impact report, which is included as Appendix B to the committee report. The local impact report details the Council's proposed comments to the examining authority regarding the likely impacts of the development. Additionally, the Council is invited to submit written representations on any matters relevant to the proposal. The objections outlined in the committee report's recommendation are intended to form the basis of the Council's written response in that respect. An application for this proposal was made in April of this year, and in May, the Planning Inspectorate accepted it for examination. The examination in public commenced on 16th of September, and an examination timetable has been published, which sets out dates for various hearings and also deadlines by which information should be submitted by interested parties. The first deadline in this timetable is on the 7th of October, and it's at this point the Council is required to submit its local impact report and its written representation, and it provides the opportunity for the Council to set out its overall position on the application. Could I have the next slide, please? The Beacon Fen development site is proposed to be located on predominantly agricultural land, the largest part of the site lying to the north of Heckington and north of the A17. The land falls within the administrative areas of North Stephen District Council and also in part Boston Borough Council. Have the next slide, please. This next plan shows the site in more close-up. It has 3 main areas. The blue area to the north, between the villages of Irby and South Kyme, is the area proposed for the solar arrays, an on-site substation and a battery energy storage facility. The pink-coloured corridor extending from the southwest of the site to the A17 is land for a bespoke access road, and the yellow corridor extending south and southeast is the cable route corridor to the Bicker Fen substation, where the development proposes to connect to the grid. The cable route corridor is crossed by several local highways, and the A17 crosses east-west within the northwest section. A railway linking Heckington West to Seaford and east to Swineshead intersects the middle section of the corridor. The development site primarily consists of farmland with sparse tree cover, generally limited to small areas of woodland and scattered hedgerow trees. The area is predominantly grade 1, 2, 3A and 3B agricultural land. Best and most versatile agricultural land that would be occupied by the development amounts to approximately 277 hectares, around 56% of the total development site. Within 20 kilometres of the site, there are 3 internationally important biodiversity sites and 2 nationally important sites within 10 kilometres of the order limits. Additionally, 10 non-statutory sites lie within or near the order limits, including several local wildlife sites, such as the Great Hale O and the South 40-foot Drain, which both intersect the cable route corridor. Similarly, there are no heritage designations found within the site itself. However, there are a number of statutory historical designations, including scheduled monuments and listed buildings found within the nearby villages and hamlets. Parts of the order limits in the northeast corner of the solar array and the mid and southern section of the cable route corridor fall within flood zones 2 and 3. A small reservoir is also located in the southwest of the solar array area. Finally, there are a number of public rights of way that intersect with the development site. Could I have the next slide, please? This plan shows a more detailed illustration of the solar array area and identifies proposed locations for specific aspects of the development. The development would consist of solar photovoltaic electricity generating areas, an on-site substation, a battery energy storage system, BESS for short, which I shall use going forward, a 400 kV cable route corridor to connect to the development to the National Grid substation at Bickerfen and other associated infrastructure. The development is expected to be able to generate 400 megawatts of electrical output per year to the grid and would have an anticipated operational life of 40 years, following which it's proposed to be decommissioned, which would take up to a further 5 years. A detailed description of the development is set out in paragraphs 11 to 24 of the committee report. The areas proposed for the ground-mounted solar PV generating areas are shown by the light grey areas on the plan. The maximum total surface area proposed to be covered by solar panels would be 529 hectares. These areas would comprise of the solar PV modules fixed to a mounting structure. The height of the panels would vary across the site dependent on the potential flood risk. The proposed height would range from between 3.5 to 3.9 metres. A 600 megawatt capacity BESS and substation, which are designed to provide the peak generation and grid balancing services to the National Grid, would also be located in this area. And that is the square parcel of land located in the centre of the site. There would be other infrastructure in this area, and this would include power conversion units, which comprise of transformers and inverters and switchgear, which are also required to manage the electricity generated by the PV modules. There'd also be on-site cabling between the solar PV panels, internal access tracks and compounds that would be used during the construction period. The electricity generated by the proposed development would be exported via the 400 kV underground cable connection between the on-site substation and the National Grid Bickerfen substation. The Bickerfen substation would require an upgrade and extension. These works are included in the development consent order application, but would be undertaken by National Grid Electricity Transmission and not by the applicant. The plan also shows areas proposed for green infrastructure and existing tree and woodland areas in various shades of green. Habitat creation is proposed and includes the creation of grassland, hedgerows, woodland and tree and shrub planting. The development would, however, see some losses of trees, shrubs and hedgerows, and it's proposed that these would be reinstated on decommissioning. As I mentioned previously, there are a number of public rights-of-way that cross the sites, and these are proposed, some of these are proposed to be temporarily closed. The proposal would also include the creation of a new permissive path, which would offer potential to establish connections with the existing rights-of-way network. Construction vehicles would access via a proposed new bespoke access road from the A17. The point where the new road would join the solar array area is shown hatched in pink to the southwest of the site. Could I have the next slide, please? This slide just shows some typical examples of solar PVs and mounting structures and examples of additional infrastructure that would be needed in the solar PV area of the site. The top right photograph is of a typical string converter unit, and the bottom right picture is of a typical transformer cabin. Can I have the next slide, please? This next slide just shows a couple of visualisations that illustrate what the solar panels might look like in the landscape. The top one being at completion and the lower one at the 15-year point once the vegetation has become more established. This particular viewpoint is on Ferry Lane to the north of the site. If I could have the next slide, please. This final slide just shows a more detailed plan of the on-site substation and BESS area in the centre of the site, solar array area. The compound would have a maximum footprint of 40,000 square metres. The substation would be enclosed by security fencing up to 3.4 metres high. Other structures in the substation area could be up to 13 metres high. Acoustic fencing up to 4 metres high may also be required around the BESS. You can see on here the cable route corridor shown in pink, which exits the site to the north. Turning now to the local impact report and the impacts of the development. The topic areas that have been considered are set out from section 7 in the local impact report. The issues considered in the local impact report are not exhaustive, but consider those impacts where the council has expertise and or an interest. The potential impacts have been assessed against the relevant national planning policies and also local development plan policies. The local impact report identifies positive, neutral and negative effects that could arise as a result of this development at this stage. It should be noted that the national planning policy set out in the overarching national planning policy statement for energy, EN1, considers this type of development as critical national priority infrastructure. The Beacon Fen Energy Park proposal aims to contribute to renewable energy generation with a capacity of 400 megawatts. This aligns with the objectives of the national planning statements and the key national government commitments. While the project has the potential to deliver positive outcomes through the production of clean renewable energy, support for this scheme is contingent upon demonstrating that any significant adverse environmental impacts can be effectively managed or mitigated through the development consent order process. There is also potential for this proposal to deliver biodiversity net gain, an improvement to the public right-of-way network and potential for some socio-economic and wider community benefits. However, the examining authority will need to balance any positive benefits against the potential negative effects. The local impact report sets out the likely issues and impacts that may arise from the construction, operation and decommissioning of the development. Whilst I don't propose to go through all the issues set out in the local impact report in detail, as members will already be aware of them from having seen the report, but I would like to highlight those topics where the council has statutory responsibilities and those that are currently considered to be the most significant in terms of the potential for negative effects, and those that will form the basis of the recommendation to raise an objection to the proposals in the council's written representation. Firstly, landscape and visual. We have commissioned AAH landscape consultants to review the application on our behalf, and their full comments are appended to the local impact report. In summary, by virtue of its scale and massing, it is considered that the development would result in significant adverse effects on local landscape character and visual amenity during all key phases of development. Fundamentally altering the character of the site and its surroundings, replacing open agricultural fields with intensive solar infrastructure. This would represent a substantial and long-term change to the openness, tranquility and rural character of the area. The scale and extent of development would also lead to significant adverse effects on views from receptors by altering from views within an agricultural or rural landscape to that of a landscape with large-scale solar development. The cumulative landscape and visual effects of this development with other large-scale projects also have the potential to bring about significant landscape and visual effects. In terms of ecological impacts, it is considered that there is a potential for negative cumulative impacts with other solar developments on ground nesting birds. This proposal also, however, aims to deliver biodiversity net gain, and based on the current plans, the proposal is predicted to deliver significant levels of biodiversity net gain, which could result in a positive outcome if the anticipated levels are secured and achieved. In terms of traffic and transport, the Highway Authority are satisfied with the assessment that has been undertaken and do not expect capacity issues on the highway network as a result of the development. There has been recent improvements at key junctions in the area and no critical pinch points have been identified. As such, no significant cumulative impacts with other developments is anticipated. No objections on traffic and transport grounds have been raised by the Highway Authority. The proposed temporary closure of multiple footpaths during construction is likely to negatively affect the accessibility and overall functionality of the wider public rights-of-way network. Despite the inclusion of a new permissive path, the overall impact on the public right-of-way network is considered to be negative. As I've previously mentioned, parts of the site are located in flood zones 2 and 3, which are areas at high risk of flooding. The council, as the lead local flood authority, have not raised any concerns regarding the assessments undertaken by the applicant in respect of flood risk and surface water drainage. We have also considered the development in terms of site selection and the requirements to undertake a sequential test when development is located in high-risk flood areas. And this is the National Planning Policy Statement EM1 requires a sequential test to be followed to direct developments to areas with the lowest flood risk, considering all sources of flooding and climate change. Even if a flood risk assessment shows that a development can be made safe without increasing flood risk elsewhere, the sequential test must be met. If low-risk areas are unavailable, the test should compare sites in medium-risk areas, and if none are available, then in high-risk areas. Currently, however, there is insufficient information and/or evidence being provided in the application to properly interrogate the applicant's assertion that the sequential test has indeed been passed with regards to site selection, and further evidence is therefore considered to be required to verify this. Concerns are raised in the local impact report about cultural heritage. A comprehensive assessment of the potential impacts on heritage and a critique of the applicant's assessment is set out in section 9 of the local impact report. It is considered that the development would harm the setting of designated and non-designated heritage assets, eroding their significance through changes to the landscape character. The applicant's assessment underestimates the extent of harm, particularly where setting and group value are overlooked. Based on current information, the impact on built heritage assets is not convincingly justified, and further assessment and mitigation is considered to be needed to meet planning policy requirements. There's also a potential for slight adverse impacts on archaeology, which have been identified in the local impact report. Turning to agricultural land, Chapter 12 of the local impact report considers the impact of the development. Landscape consultants have also been commissioned to review the application, and their report is also provided as an appendix to the local impact report. As we have seen with other large-scale solar schemes, there would be a loss of best and most versatile agricultural land, which is considered to be significant at district and county level, particularly when considered cumulatively with other large-scale solar schemes in the wider area that have either been granted consent or are in the development consent order process currently. Because concerns are expressed about the incremental loss of best and most versatile land to large-scale infrastructure projects, which intensifies pressure on remaining agricultural land to maintain food production. And this could lead to increased reliance on food imports, raising concerns about sustainability due to longer supply chains, higher carbon emissions and food miles. Over the full development site, the applicant's assessment indicates that 277 hectares of best and most versatile land would be lost, 257 hectares of which is classed as a temporary loss, predominantly within the solar array areas, which is proposed to be reinstated upon completion of the development. However, around 20 hectares would be permanently removed from use due to the construction of built infrastructure and the access corridor. This loss of best and most versatile land is considered to be contrary to national policy in the National Policy Statements EM1 and EM3, and also Policy S67 of the Central Lincolnshire Local Plan. Whilst the loss of best and most versatile land under the solar panels is considered as temporary, 40 plus years is a long period of time. Productive farmland would be removed and replaced with lower intensity grass-based system. This loss of arable production is considered to be significant at a local level. The local impact report also considers the cumulative impact with other developments on best and most versatile land. It is considered that the applicant's assessment underestimates the amount of best and most versatile land affected by solar development in Lincolnshire, and as such we do not agree with the applicant's assessment in this respect. Turning to socio-economic considerations, section 13 of the local impact report addresses the socio-economic impacts of the development. The commitment to skills, employment and the local supply chain, alongside the proposed development consent order requirement for a skills, supply chain and employment plan, is welcomed and should be viewed positively. However, this must be balanced against the temporary nature of most jobs and the reliance on specialist solar suppliers. The potential for several negative social economic impacts have also been identified in the local impact report. A major concern is the pressure on local services, especially accommodation, caused by the temporary construction workforce, particularly when considered cumulative with other infrastructure development. The site's location within two valued national character areas also raises risks to the visitor economy, which are not considered to have been fully addressed. Furthermore, the application does not assess the economic impact of reduced agricultural output or the wider effects on the food supply chain. Taken together, the potential socio-economic impacts of this and other nationally significant infrastructure projects are substantial and are not fully analysed or mitigated. The local impact report also considers the potential for impacts on public health and raises concerns about mental health effects on the local communities. Noting that there are some positive enhancements proposed as part of the development, it is considered that more could be done to mitigate negative effects on public health. There are also concerns, as with other solar developments, about the generation of waste, in particular the cumulative impacts of this combined with the other multiple large-scale solar farms that have either now been consented or planned in Lincolnshire. With no current facilities in the UK to recycle solar panels at this scale, this is a growing concern for us at the Council, not only considering decommissioning, but also from replacement of panels within the development's lifetime. Finally, the local impact report highlights concerns about cumulative effects. There are currently 5 granted development consent orders for solar farms and 8 other NSIP scale solar farm proposals at various stages of the development consent order process in Lincolnshire. In addition, the county is host for further 10 nationally significant project proposals, including 5 Great Grid upgrade proposals and a new Lincolnshire reservoir. The cumulative impacts of the Beacon Fen Energy Park, combined with the other developments identified, could be significant and include landscape and visual effects, the long-term loss of best and most versatile agricultural land, potential impacts on ground nesting birds, the socio-economic factors and the described waste impact. Chairman, that concludes the presentation on the report, and the recommendation to this committee is therefore to approve the submission of the local impact report at Appendix B to the submission of the examining authority, and that the County Council informs the Beacon Fen examining authority of its objection to the development consent order application in its written response, based on the reasons summarised in the recommendation in the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you, Justine, for your comprehensive presentation. We have no registered speakers to the application. Are there any members of the committee who would like to make comment on the application?
Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Chair. I think from the report we've just heard, it's quite clear there are a lot of significant negative impacts, both on the local economy, the local social economic, and also on the biodiversity. There's also an awful lot of concern regarding the waste and recycling of these solar panels. And there's also the question of the BESS, which I have extreme concerns about. The safety of BESS is doubtful at best. So, as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to propose that we reject this application.
So is that moving the officer's recommendation then?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to second that proposal. I think it's a very comprehensive and very good report that's been done for us and fully justifies the fact that we would object with a serious grounding in terms of a very thorough and professional report done of an impact report. just on comment, I mean, it would have been helpful on page 161 to have the actual site of application with a red line round it, as is normal. I don't know why that didn't happen, because you have to go to the right to the back where they've, I think it's the one of the soil impact where you can actually work out exactly where this application is. And I could just carry on from the BESS. I would question whether do all these reports, well, there's two things. One is the BESS, which first of all in terms of safety and fire, there seems to be very limited information about in the event of a fire, and they have happened, and when they do happen, you can't put them out. And then there's a risk of then it's spreading across the whole of these units. I mean, I'd just like to ask a question of these BESS units, because it's not really been covered in the report. How many transfer boxes, or whatever they call them, there will be lots, I can tell you. How high they will be, and there'll also be a mast of some description, because that's how these things work. And the BESS is actually a very concerning development now, because these are springing up as part of that. So I just asked the question: what do officers understand what the BESS compound will look like, and B, has it been adequately sort of covered in the grounds for objection, which I fully support?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. That's a very good question. The details in the development consent order application are quite outline at this stage, which is quite typical of this type of application. They adopt approach known as the Rochdale envelope, which allows for quite a bit of flexibility in the design of a project. Predominantly the reasons given for this are that the technology is not firmed up at this stage on what would be the final commissioned technology on the site. So therefore the numbers, the design of these units could change, and that is factored into the requirements of the proposed requirements within the draft development consent order itself, which would require, should they get consent for it, the developer would have to come back for further approvals for the specific design and the details around the BESS itself. We're just given, but all we're provided at this stage is sort of indicative details of what the BESS compound might be like.
I thought in the report it said 40,000. There is a figure of how much the storage capacity of the BESS. So surely it's then possible to translate that into how many units, I think they call them units or boxes or whatever they are, how many of those they would need. So I'm not sure there must be a way where you can translate the capacity into how many boxes, put in layman's terms.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the BESS has been given a maximum capacity of 600 megawatts. But to determine actually how many number of those units, we would have to have information on what technology, what supplier, what manufacturer that they were using. But it would be a significant number of units. They typically run into many hundreds. Yeah.
I think which in itself is a big, because obviously the BESS is actually more intrusive, arguably, than the solar panels, which are at least sort of on ground level. So I'm just questioning whether it could be beefed up there. But certainly support the report, which is very thorough.
Councillor Overton.
Much. Yes, and I'm pleased to see that there's a certain amount that's really strong in here, which I think is appropriate to this application. I would be interested in looking at the knock-on impact on the economy as well. You do raise the point about the impact on the agriculture, but obviously if you take out the agriculture, there's all the jobs that go with it. And just checking on the internet now, it's 24% of the jobs are associated with agriculture in Lincolnshire, and 1.8 billion to the UK's economy. So I think it is really worth being quite clear on that aspect. So I think that's and quite detailed on it, which is useful, asking for more clarification from the applicant also. I'd also like to pick up the point about the battery storage systems. And it always surprises me that these applications, even when we went to that Springwell application, there was a lot that is just left. You know, this will be decided, best available technology at the time. But that's not good enough normally. You know, we don't normally give planning application for 1,000 houses and say, oh, well, build them how you like at the time. You know, it's just not acceptable at all. And I think it's really important that we clarify that we would expect proper details in order to comment, really. In terms of numbers of units, or I would say storage containers, they're shipping containers, basically. And at Colby in Lincolnshire, they proposed 1,324 shipping containers full of lithium battery close to the village. It's astonishing. So I really think that you know, we need a lot more information as to how they would, if there was a fire, how they would put it out, how much water they would need. Well, they're not going to put it out, are they? They're just going to use water to cool other units. And then how they would contain that water, how they would dispose of that contaminated water, and whether they've got adequate resources on site to do that. Because we know that our fire authority are not going to be able to manage, probably, they're not going to put out any, but they're not going to manage, you know, what if there's more than one fire at a time? What about a cumulative impact of fires? And it was only recently that a colleague of mine in London said that they had 5 fires going concurrently in their borough at one time. And they had to take in fire appliances from all over London. Well, what would we do if we had 5 at one time? So I think it's really important to look at that cumulative impact as well. So thank you for you know, a pretty thorough piece of work. This one is different in that it does already have a station, a connection point, you know, which some of them don't, like the one in my area. But nevertheless, I think your points are really strong in there. And the amount of land taken for the connection, I think, is relevant also. It's a long piece of land, big amount. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think I would just like to echo Councillor Overton's observations. We do need to know what these battery storages are, because how are you going to put a risk assessment together if you do not know what technology they're using? It's impossible to know whether it's going to be a lithium ion, it can be a cobalt, if it's going to be tightly packed, whether it's going to be air cooled. I think we do need to ask any application, we need to know the technologies that it may not be they're going to use, but they could be using. And I think on the other point is, yes, there is a connection, but in the report it does state additional substations are going to have to be built at Bicker as well to accommodate for this. So although there is a connection there, it's not a connection that can go straight into. But I think Councillor Overton, absolutely amazing, bring up about the fact we need to know the technologies. Was it Councillor Murray?
Yeah, I understand people not liking change, Chairman, but what worries me about what Justine was saying earlier, it was all entirely negative, and we have to think about the national context, because at the moment everybody's complaining about the cost of energy, and that's because we buy it in. This is about, for me, this is why I support it, this is about clean, renewable energy produced in our own country, and it's a shame if we have to cover some of the fields up in Lincolnshire, but surely the idea of getting clean, renewable energy is a good idea, and you know, thinking about the future, about our kids and our grandkids, that'll benefit them as well, so I would support it.
Councillor Overton.
Thank you. I do appreciate the good sentiment there. My issue, though, is that we still have vast amounts of commercial roof that are lying vacant, and you know, this is not really about renewable energy. This is much more about enabling global companies to take sufficient profits from the country, from us. And in terms of electricity prices, they are kept high. We pay a very high electricity price, amongst the highest, even though we have the biggest renewable, because they want to keep it high in order to make big profits to enable all of this to go ahead. Whereas if you put it on a commercial roof to provide a commercial company with energy, it would be far less infrastructure required. But I guess that's more of a general point than applying to this application. Thank you.
It is, but one that we I believe, very strongly support. Councillor Bean.
Yeah, just a brief point, Chair, just to reiterate about the cumulative effect of these sort of sites in Lincolnshire. I believe at present there are around 100 NSIPs nationally, out of which I believe 28 are in Lincolnshire alone. That is a lot of farmland.
Thank you. Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Chair. When the Romans came here 2,500 years ago, they built High Dyke, and they built it in a straight line, shortest distance they could go. Why is this company unable to lay an underground cable in a straight line from Howell to Bicker? Thank you.
I don't know. I'm guessing there are ecological reasons and other obstacles in the way. But again, do we have any further speakers? Wonderful. Well, if there's no further speakers, we have had moved by Councillor Bean and that the committee approves the submission of the local impact report at Appendix B to the Beacon Fen Solar Examining Authority and informs the Beacon Fen Solar Examining Authority of the County Council's objection to the Development Consent Order application as noted in the report. It has been seconded by Councillor Hill. I'll then take a vote of a raise of hands. All those in favour? Those against?
I declared an interest. Thank you.
And any abstentions? That's been carried as 7 in favour and 1 against. Thank you very much. And finally, that will conclude the end of the meeting of the business today. There was
2 p.m.
Brilliant. There was a meeting at 1:30. It has now been postponed to 2 p.m. today in the council chamber, where we have a councillor development event on definitive maps and public right-of-ways training. This training is mandatory for those who sit on definitive map and public right-of-way subcommittee, but is available to all members to join if they wish to do so. Our next meeting will be Monday, the 3rd of November at 10:30 a.m. Thank you all for your attendance, and I now close the meeting at 1:44 p.m. Thank you very much.
Thank you.